Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back here to Apex Racing TV, and welcome to a special presentation of the 41st Weekend Warriors Runoffs. My name is Ron Mons. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Mr. Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old friend Simuli Kumo. And today, for the 41st running of this event, it may be the most special yet. Today we're ready to rock and roll under the blinding lights at Daytona International Speedway. Over the next 2 hours, we hope to bring you some awesome action from start to finish, and kick it off this afternoon, we have the Formula Fords. These Formula Ford races have been pretty intense so far this season, Charles. Just harkening back in my mind, I remember many moons ago we had the Lake Sebring race completely flood with rain, which we won't have here this afternoon. And even last time out at VIR on the Grand Loud, we had a grandstand finish between Christian Kabanka and Yanxi Lin. So to pass this off to you, we're running at Daytona, and how do you expect this race to be today?
I mean, it's Daytona, so obviously iconic track. It's very familiar to, I'm sure, every driver in iRacing. It seems like that's one of those tracks that if there's a car running there, everybody wants to compete in that category. I don't think it's any different with Formula 4s. These guys, are just love, competing, and this is going to be one of those fast tracks, as we saw a little spin there from our league organizer Stevie Ray coming through the bus stop. But it's a draft track, so the draft is going to play a big role in the end of this race. But with the races we've had, that's actually been a good thing. We've had some very close finishes here in the recent few weeks. And with nice clear weather, then we'll have to worry about rain or anything like that. So it should make for a really very exciting and probably a tight race up toward the front.
Oh, I think it is going to be very tight, even in these Formula Fords, which don't draft as well, so to speak, as the Spec Racer 4s will have later on this afternoon. However, the Formula Fords still have a pretty decent slipstream, and we're definitely going to see that put on full display when it comes time to taking the checkered flag in the race that we have coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. So usually when it comes time for the start of these broadcasts, we're in the qualifying session already, but I think we're still in this practice session. So we'll try and look at some of the drivers that are racing with us here this afternoon and try and just run through the heavy hitters that we have racing with us here this afternoon. It's going to be a packed field, and you can see 20 cars have already set a time in this practice session. Only about 2 minutes left to go in this 2-hour-long session. You can see some very heavy hitters. Megan Overstreet, who's thankfully been with us the past few weeks. It's been about a month now ever since she re-hooked up with this Weekend Warriors series after having to take off most of the season because of work obligations. She has been with us throughout the past few weeks and has been wonderful to see. She has been the epicenter of a whole lot of action. My mind goes back to Imola a couple weeks ago when she got a fantastic view of the underside of Stevie Ray's car coming to the checkered flag. And Megan, she's always a very fast driver, and putting that on full display here in this practice session with about a 1/10 of a second gap over Jason Green in P2.
Yeah, Megan, I kind of gave her the nickname a few seasons ago of Miss Consistent because she was consistently a top 10 car week in and week out, most of the time top 5. But even if she had a bad qualifying, she somehow found her way up to the front of the field before the race was over with. Fantastic racer, obviously, now trying to get her real life racing career started with her new SCCA license. So it's always good to see her on track because she does. It's another very fast car up there in the front battling, and she is a very clean, consistent racer. She doesn't. She won't make a lot. She won't make any dirty moves. But that being said, she races hard, so she won't give up a spot either. You got to take it from her. So it's good to see her. And as you said, Jason Green, Bobby West, Julian Ditchburn, Benjamin Harris up in the front of the field. So, the usual suspects of our front runners. So it's good to see them here. And it's going to just add to the excitement of the race.
And you mentioned Jason Green, currently P2 in this practice session that has just come to a conclusion. The checkered flag is now out, and all of the cars have been yoinked back to pit lane, and they're going to start this qualifying session just a few moments time. But Jason Green, P2 in that practice session, and P2 in the Spec 1 Championship this past season here with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Championship. We'll see what these drivers can do. A little bit odd here this evening, the fact we're having a solo qualifying session. Usually all the cars are on track together. This afternoon, however, that is not the case. You can see Jason Green negotiating his way through the pit exit, which is going to be a factor in this race. These drivers have to deal with the pit stop in these Weekend Warriors races, and this pit exit, it's synonymous. It's caught out many drivers over the years. I remember the first year I watched the 24 Hours of Daytona. Jeff Gordon, one of the all-time greats in the NASCAR world, was running in the GTP category that year. Actually, no, it was DPI back then. Good Lord. Running in the DPI class and actually hit the wall on pit exit. So that's going to be a pretty big factor in this race, Charles. What do you think?
You mean, yeah, you mean I drive like Jeff Gordon? I've hit that wall so many times, it's not even funny. So yeah, it's that is one of the little keys to the race. Obviously, getting onto pit road is a key as well. I don't know how difficult it is, but if you're at max speed with the car, you got to come off the banking down into the apron. Sometimes gets the car a little squirrely, so pit exit is going to be pretty crucial. So yeah, that's going to be another point that we'll have to watch.
You know, we mentioned a few moments ago about this man, Jason Green, who ended up P2 in the championship. I think we have an image going through all the championship results from this past season of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Championship. It was dramatic. It started all the way back in March, ended just last week, and it was a fantastic season, my first one to be a part of, and it was just action-packed from start to finish. Had some brilliant moments, some awesome races. I believe one of the other highlights from Long Beach, the Long Beach race from a few weeks ago, ended up on the Apex Racing TV highlight reel here on Apex for the month of May. But you can see, I believe you can see now on the broadcast the other champions that we've had and the top three runners. In Spec 1, it was Yanqi Lin, the driver, ending up taking the championship in that category, the premier category here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Jason Green ended up second, and Michael McConnell ended up in P3 in the Spec 1 category. Then in Spec 2, it was a fairly full-on conclusion a few weeks ago, but Julian Ditchburn, the Canadian, took a dominant win in the Spec 2 championship. He ended up in front of Britt Paul Stevens in second, and David Foy, another Canadian, rounded out the top three in the Spec 2 category. Then in Masters, it was Antonio Reese and York Mani ending up P1 and P2, which, considering how they were constantly hit by falling anvils all throughout this past season, is truly a miracle that they ended up in the top two of that category. And then Chris Murakami ended up in P3 in that Masters class. So that's a brief look at the championship results from this past season, and we do have some of those drivers joining us here this evening. I was looking through, I don't believe our reigning Weekend Warriors runoffs winner in the Formula Fords, that being at a rain-soaked Okayama a few months ago when Aero Gnome, the Estonian driver, ended up taking the checkered flag there. I don't believe he has joined us here this evening, but still, we have a whole lot of heavy hitters all throughout this 20-car field.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations to all the podium finishers. It was a really great season. Lots of ups and downs, as you said, with various and sundry things like weather and alien abductions and everything else that goes along with it. But yeah, it's great to see, and congrats to all the winners. It was, like I said, it was a great season. And so yeah, it's looking forward to getting this race over, and then we'll ramp up for next season, probably next week. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, it's going to be nuts this upcoming season. We have some new tracks that we'll be visiting here, at least tracks that we didn't visit this past season. We'll probably have a little bit of talk about the schedule, certainly when the Weekend Warriors series returns here on Apex Racing TV in about a week's time. We'll run you through the schedule, get you up to date before the festivities kick off for Season 3 of 2024. And there's a man behind it, Stevie Ray, in the 911 car, heading his way down into the tri-oval, about to begin his first qualifying lap. You can see some drivers already setting some times on the board, and Stevie Ray slots his way into fourth. As things stand at the moment, only 5 cars now, Rise. I say that 7 cars, 8 cars to set a qualifying time, and yet again, Megan Overstreet at the front at a 2:01.737. That's a very quick lap time from her in the 044 car, heading her way through turn number 4, the horseshoe now, and we'll see if she can improve on this second lap.
Yeah, we'll see. And it's interesting. It's a 4-lap qualifying, but based on the fact that they're running over 2 minutes and they have an outlap, I'm not sure they're going to be able to get that 4th lap in. So you might want to get your best lap in early, because I think most of these drivers are going to run out of time. I don't think they're going to make it around for that 4th and final lap of qualifying.
It gives you more of an incentive to hit that gas pedal a little bit harder and take a little bit more heading your way through the corners. Jason Green going back onto the banking now, heading through turn number 8 on the road course. This would be turn number 1 and 2 on the big tri-oval. Currently third in this qualifying session with, I believe, Jesus Rodriguez in second. That's a pretty good lap time from the driver of the 76 car. So we'll see these drivers start to set in some cookers of lap times. We'll see that grid that we have right now, 15 cars setting a qualifying time as it stands at the moment, separated by less than 4 seconds with the first laps on the board. That is definitely going to shuffle up between now and the end of this. Now we have a 16th driver to set a qualifying time. Oh boy, we'll just call him the driver of the 777 car because I don't want to butcher a pronunciation 10 minutes into this broadcast. He's currently in 16th. Heinz heading his way into turn number 4 right now. A very striking car, currently in 16th. I'm sure he'll try and improve on his position between now and the end of this qualifying session, which I feel like has flown by. We already have only 4 minutes left to go, so we see Jason Grider in the wall in the 252 car, but still not a whole lot of time left to go in the qualifying session for these drivers here this afternoon.
Yeah, not long yet. It's like I said, there's about 3.5 minutes left. So you see, looks like Overstreet starting lap 3. So she's got 2 laps in.
Lap 3.
Yep. And so still on the board with the fastest time, but you know it's tight up at the top. You know, 1500ths of a second between her and Rodriguez. And there's still a few drivers yet to set what I would think is probably a representative lap. So we'll watch and continue on here as these drivers try to finish off qualifying with the best run they can make.
This is Bobby West in the number 89 car heading his way through turn number 4. As things stand currently, he's 4th in this qualifying session. A pretty good lap time, only a half a second off of Megan Overstreet, who did not improve on that last lap. So we'll see what these drivers do when it comes to lap time. I believe I was taking a look at the forecast in iRacing before the start of this broadcast, and it was seeming like 80-degree track temperatures roughly when these drivers were going to take the start of the race. So even though we are racing under the lights, it's still burning hot here in Florida at Daytona International Speedway. So maybe that could be the reason why these drivers are feeling the burn when it comes to trying to improve their lap times, managing the tire temperatures. That is so huge in these Formula Ford race cars. As you can see, they don't have any wings on them, so you're relying so much on that mechanical grip. And right as we say that, Jason Green leaning on those left-hand side tires, heading his way through the Le Mans chicane, which I still occasionally call the bus stop. But yeah, Jason Green putting it on full display. We'll see if these drivers can actually improve their lap times. If not, we may have to talk about tire fall off in this race we have coming up as well.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of waiting for, was another driver to come through and set the next lap, because it does look like there's a bit of a drop with the tires. But as we said, that here comes Green now for his 3rd lap, and that is an improvement. So looks like that there is a and just a lock up going into turn 1. I'm sure that will be that won't be the last time we see that during the race. And we see Overstreet has also improved her time now to a 201.56. So she's extended her lead in the front up to 2200ths of a second over Green. So yeah, it looks like the tires, it may take them a lap or 2 to get up to 10, but then, you know, we'll have to just wait and see until race start to see if it drops off in that latter half of the race.
We're seeing some drivers set some very good lap times. Bobby West has just jumped his way up into P number 2, with Jeff Jacobson shooting his way up to 8th. So maybe these drivers going for an interesting strategy, pushing 1 lap, then cooling off the tires the next, and then pushing yet again. I believe that's Jesus Rodriguez pulling off the track on pit entry. So that's going to be his qualifying session over, with about 30 seconds left to go in this qualifying session. 4th is the highest that he will be. This Brad Cathcart, actually no, my apologies, this is Jeff Jacobson. We just saw Brad Cathcart cross the line on our live timing screen. He shoots his way up to P14, not too bad from the driver of the 905 car. And we're seeing some more drivers. This is Nathan Bowden here heading his way to the start-finish line, currently P16. Will he move up a spot? No, he does not. I don't believe he improved his lap time, so he will remain in 16th. We have some more drivers setting some qualifying times, including our Apex Racing TV colleague Josh Wilkie in the number 20 car. We'll see him cross the start-finish line in just a few moments' time. I think he... the checkered flag is has come out in this qualifying session, so he's going to be starting right at the back of the field. That is not ideal from our Canadian colleague, but I think with that qualifying session wrapped up, we can take a look at the starting grid from the vRunoffs, the 41st vRunoffs here with the Formula Fords. 20 cars are going to be starting in. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with a fantastic time of 2:01.560. She's going to be starting this race from the pole. Bobby West in second, Jason Green in third, Jesus Rodriguez, the driver from Iberia, is going to be starting this race in fourth. Bill Walker in P5, Paul Stevens in sixth, Pedro Carvalho, one of the standout stars in the Spec 2 category week in and week out in this series. He's going to be starting this race in seventh. Jeff Jacobson in eighth, Stevie Ray Series admin in ninth, and our reigning S2 champion Julian Ditchburn will be starting this race in 10th.
Yep, and so in 11th, we'll have Benjamin Harris. Gary Wolbolt will be in P12. Dana Bowes will be in P13. Brad Cathcart in 14th. Phil Berry in 15th. Nathan Bowden in 16th. Jason Grider in 17th. Paul Jackson in 18th. Heinz Hochholdinger in 19th. And Josh Wilkie will round out our 20-car grid.
Hochholdinger, I'll try and get that pronunciation burned into my memory before the start of this race. Yeah.
I have no idea if that's correct or not, but that's how I pronounced it.
I think it may be correct. Similarly, are we good on the pronunciation, or are we, do we need to get pulled over here? Hochholdinger. All right. Okay. Hochholdinger. So we'll go with that. We'll see. We'll try our best to try and get the pronunciations right for this race. And speaking of, the drivers are starting their pace lap, a shortened pace lap, so we don't have a whole long ways left to go here before we grab the green. And Megan Overstreet is going to be getting a fantastic view of that Porsche pace car, leading them around, and you can see the headlights on that Porsche pace car. They don't have headlights on these Formula Ford cars, however, it's still going to be an interesting sight seeing these cars running under the lights, the blinding lights, the stadium lights, if you want to call them, here at Daytona International Speedway. And one thing we haven't mentioned throughout this broadcast, this race is only 30 minutes long. We're usually used to 40-minute affairs here with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Series, but here with the runoffs, only 30 minutes long. So that may throw a little bit of an interesting challenge when it comes to when you want to make that pit stop, when you want to push hard. We've seen drivers throughout the series pit well after that 30-minute mark, so maybe some drivers going for some interesting fuel strategies to try and optimize their speed in this race that we have coming up. You can see the whole field lined up behind. I think our buddy Josh Wilkie is trying to overtake some cars before the green. That may not be the smartest strategy in the world. Nevertheless, we're getting that Porsche pace car off the track. The field is now in the hands of Bobby West and Megan Overstreet. Our front row sitters are waiting for that flagman to wave the green flag, which he has now. The drivers are now on their way, heading into turn number one. They have a horrible bump going off the banking and into the infield section to try and negotiate with first, but it's going to be Megan Overstreet with a pretty good start, leading them into turn number one. Some drivers shuffling around well farther behind. We've got some drivers going 3 wide into turn number one. That is bold at the very beginning of this race, but it's Megan Overstreet leading them, heading their way into turn number 4 with some drivers even shuffling. Jason Green, you can see moving up into P number 2, getting a move done on Bobby West, but they're still side by side, heading their way through turn number 4 and on to the back straightaway before they negotiate the kink. One of them is going to have to back out, and it looks like Bobby West is going to be that driver. However, farther behind, you've got Bill Walker going for a bold move on Pedro Carvalho, heading through turn number 5. He gets that move done to slide his way into 5th. Nicely played from the driver of the number 19 car. More drivers shuffling around all throughout this field, and we haven't even made it onto the banking. Stevie Ray, we're following him, running in P number 9. Barry is making up the final cars in the top 10. Right as I say that, Benjamin Harris slots his way into that top 10 spot. They're side by side, heading their way into turn number 7, about to go back onto the banking. Surprisingly clean, heading through the infield section the first time by.
Yeah, good start. I think the only car I saw, I think it was Bowden, that maybe had an issue on the pace lap. But for the most part, everybody's got a good start. As we talked about, Josh Wilkie with an early jump, picked up a few positions, maybe too early. We'll see if he gets a black flag during the race. And I will say, I did hear a little in-race communications in practice with Stevie and one of our newer competitors. That as we see Benjamin Harris and also Jackson as well. Yep, and Jason Grider over there. So the bus stop, or the Le Mans chicane, has claimed yet another victim. As I was saying, I did hear Stevie Ray saying that they've got enough fuel to run the 30-minute race. However, part of the rules is they have to take a pit stop or a drive-through prior to the last lap. So they will have to come down pit road and they'll just do a drive-through, and they can then continue on with the race.
Just have to wait and see how these drivers manage then. Bobby West is dropping down like a rock through the running order, now down to P number 6. So the driver that started this race on the front row alongside Megan Overstreet is really struggling. He's locked steady in a freaking Formula Ford Hornet's nest, heading his way through the opening corners on this lap number 2. You've got West, Carvalho, Jacobson, Walker, Stevens, and Ray involved as well. Actually, Stevie's a little bit farther back, but still a massive pack of Formula Ford cars trying to decide the final few top 5 positions. And all of them have a pretty good shot, and they're pretty close, heading their way through turn number 5 with this pack separated by barely any air, only actually less than 2 seconds, heading their way into the horseshoe of turn number 6. So this is going to be nice to see all throughout this race. And I think it wasn't nice to see that incident heading through the Le Mans chicane at the very beginning of this race. We may try and load up a replay to see what in the world happened to those drivers. We just saw some drivers scattering their way, doing a little bit of lawn mowing. The Daytona International Speedway landscaping crews are not going to be happy with some of these drivers after those first lap escapades, and this is what happened. We're following Benjamin Harrison, the number 51 car, heading his way into turn number 1. Okay, so he just overshot it and then into the wall. Nothing too bad. However, Harris had to tow back to the pits. Not ideal for the driver of the number 51 car. Tough start for him. It looked like he was running quite well too. He had making his way up into the top 10, but sadly things have all gone to naught as he stowed back to the pits. I believe his Alta Fords from the session. So we're already down 1 car, with Dana Bose being the last driver in P19. We're following some drivers a little bit farther up the road. Josh Wilkie is fighting like hell with Jackson and Bowden right behind. You can see Bowden running below the double yellow line. Usually in NASCAR that's not allowed. I don't think that's allowed here in the Formula Ford Weekend Warrior Series as well. And meanwhile, at the north end of the field, Jason Green has gone by Megan Overstreet to take the lead of the race right towards the end of lap number 2. Jason Green is going to be leading them at the start of lap number 3. And I think West and Rodriguez are battling hard. You can see 3 wide between Walker, Jacobson, and Carvalho heading their way through the tri-oval and into turn number 1 right now. They've thankfully broken up, because 3 wide action, these Formula Ford race cars, which do have open wheels, there's no fenders, any sort of contact, you're going to leave your driver in a world of hurt if that's the case. And you can see a big slide from Jeff Jacobson heading his way through turn number 3, very close to making contact with Walker a little bit farther up the road. All of these drivers are fighting so hard. We mentioned at the start of this race how a 30-minute race may affect some of these drivers in terms of what strategies they may use. I think it's affecting these drivers in the sense that they're fighting as hard as they absolutely can. I think this is some of the boldest and hardest racing we've seen some of these drivers have throughout this entire season.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, Jacobson caught the inside curb. I don't think he hit the pit wall, but he caught the inside curb coming to turns 2 and 3 and just kind of shot him across the track and into traffic. Luckily, no damage for anybody. But yeah, there's been lots of movement. These draft, the NASCAR oval section. You know, you get a good 4 or 5 car length draft off the car in front, as we see Overstreet going to the outside on green. Looks like she wants the top spot back, and I think we'll see a lot more of that during the course of this race. And Bose has already came in and done his drive through, so he did it early and jumped back out. So I guess that we'll call that our Joker lap, and just say, okay, everybody have to do a Joker lap, and we'll use rallycross terminology.
I like that terminology, though, Charles. We need to run with that throughout the rest of this broadcast. Jeff Jacobson was battling hard, heading his way through the, I nearly said the inner loop. That's a bus stop at Watkins Glen. Here it's a Le Mans chicane. We're seeing these drivers go side by side now onto the banking, heading through 3 and 4 on the oval. This is turn at number 12 here on the road course of Paul Stevens going side by side, trying to have some 3 wide action like they had last time by. Pedro Carvalho was nearly in the middle of that, with Jeff Jacobson running on that bottom line. All these drivers trying to dice for any position they can and make up some time. It's actually broken away, and oh my god, that's Paul Stevens taking a very odd approach, heading his way into turn number 1. He may have a monumental run heading their way into the hairpin of turn at number 4. And with that hard battling, it's brought in the likes of Stevie Ray, Ditchburn, and Barry back into this fight. Oh my god, that's a massive moment for Paul Stevens. Big sideways snap heading through the braking zone of turn number 4. He must have locked up the rears, because just as I was looking at the live timing screen, I see him. It looked like he was going to go for a kamikaze attack on the 2 drivers in front of him, heading through turn at number 4. Not sure what happened to Paul Stevens there.
I'm not sure either. We're going to get a replay here from Samuli. He's going to look, and we're on board with Paul Stevens. So hit those little curbs. That's the curb that Jacobson hit earlier. And yeah, I think he just missed communication with the car in front. And he really just had to step on the brakes and lock the rears up and just cut the car, kind of got sideways. Luckily, he was able to get, not make contact, go through the grass and continue on. Lost a little bit of time, but still early yet. We're only 7.5 minutes into the race.
I think that was part miscommunication, part avoiding action, trying to avoid running into the back of Pedro Carvalho right in front of him. So these drivers feeling really, really racy at this early stage of the race, and we're still seeing battles all throughout the field. Weston Rodriguez covered by barely any air. Jeff Jacobson has actually broken away from the fight between himself, Carvalho, and Ray a little bit farther behind. However, he's actually ducking down to the inside line, so it looks like he may be a sitting duck without any sort of slipstream help going down the start-finish straightaway. The flat-out blast to bring this lap to an end. Stevie Ray got a move done on Pedro Carvalho on corner exits to move his way into P7, and may look for the move on Jeff Jacobson to slot his way into 6th. They're going to be side-by-side heading to this start-finish line here, and Stevie Ray on that outside line. Jacobson on the inside. Looks like Stevie is going to clear him well before they get to that start-finish line. The draft in these Formula Ford cars, it's underrated, the draft in these cars, because usually compared to the Spec Racer Fords, it's just no contest. But here at this track, where a vast majority of the lap is spent flat out, you will see that draft play a huge role in this race. Carvalho running wide, heading through turn number 1. He's battling hard with Ditchburn. They're side by side, heading their way into turn number 4 right now. And it looks like Carvalho is very hesitant on the brakes. That could be part of the reason why Stevens had that moment heading into turn number 4 last time by. Looks like Carvalho is a little bit less aggressive compared to all the drivers around him, or perhaps he's seeing all the chaos unfold with these drivers battling for P6, and he's like, hey, I don't want any parts of this. We still have a long way left to go. We're not even 10 minutes into this race, and we've already seen drivers basically handle out a year's worth of aggression.
Yeah, it's been pretty frantic so far, for the first start of the race. But that's kind of the thing with Daytona is you get those big runs, and it's like you said, it's nothing compared to what we're going to see with the SRFs. But I was watching practice, and it was 4 or 5 car lengths after the bus stop going down to the start-finish line. And so the run is there, and so you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you're going to make up quite a bit of time on the cars. I think the fastest lap of the race so far is actually Julian Ditchburn in 9th. So, him running behind those other cars is getting massive amounts of that draft, and you're able to set really quick laps. But then again, we saw you have to be very careful that you don't that you make sure that you are aware of it and recognize it, and brake accordingly.
And Ditchburn also has that confidence through the corners. We saw him win overall as a Spec 2 driver at Oschersleben not very long ago. However, without that draft help, he's a sitting duck going through this flat-out blast. That was nearly a monumental accident between Carvalho and Barry as they tried to sweep their way around him, going to the start-finish line now. And Ditchburn is going to end off this lap in 9th, barely any time separating himself and Barry, with Carvalho in P8. And with this hard battling, it's allowed Jeff Jacobson and Stevie Ray to actually break away a little bit, and it's brought Paul Stevens back into that fight. You can see him in P11 in that 210 car. He is not a very long ways off. He's right to the back of Phil Barry, the driver of the 888 car, heading their way into turn number 4 right now. Paul Stevens thankfully avoiding the rally action that he did earlier on. And it's kind of interesting you mentioned earlier on in this broadcast, Charles, about us taking the Joker lap. I think at the Rallycross layout here at Daytona, the Joker layout is roughly what we saw Paul Stevens take a little bit earlier on in this race. So maybe he took that quote a little bit too literally.
Maybe so as we see Jason Grider up against the wall. I'm going to say that looks like maybe a spin from the curbs coming in through turn 1, as we'll watch again.
Ooh, running wide.
Yep.
I think you might be right here, Charles.
Yep. Just the right rear just kind of jumped over the curb and got into the grass, and around we go. So you'll see that quite a bit here. Turn 1, as far as trouble spots, turn 1, turn 6, coming off and back onto the oval section. And then obviously we saw the bus stop can be very, very terrifying when you're trying to go three wide through there.
I mean, we saw some drivers make a mistake very similar, if not identical to that. Jeff Jacobson has taken the rallycross layout, heading his way through the Le Mans chicane. He's going to drop back like a rock now, falling into the crutches of that fight with Carvalho, Ditchburn, Stevens, and Barry's actually going to act as a little bit of a pick in that. No, he's going to actually drop back a little bit. He has a slowdown, I believe, from that corner cut heading his way through the Le Mans chicane. However, he is getting a little bit of a draft help from Julian Ditchburn a little bit farther up the road now from Paul Stevens, who's just slotted in front of the driver of the number 40 car. So it's not game over for Jeff Jacobson, but that was a very costly mistake as we see Gary Wobold now come into the pits from P12. So another one of these drivers coming in for that early mandatory pit stop / drive through pit lane. We're seeing some drivers make some interesting moves on and off the track. Jeff Jacobson still in P9, battling hard with Stevens, heading their way through the 2 and 3 chicane before they meander their way into turn number 4 here. And you can see Barry looking to go for a move, and Jeff Jacobson very deep on the brakes. I'm shocked he got stopped heading into the horseshoe there, but thankfully for Jacobson's case, it was an insult added to injury after that mistake we saw midway through last lap. Thankfully, he kept it on the road at the beginning of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see Wobold come into the pits, and he actually stopped and took service. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but he's made his stop. And so he's back out on the track. So he's lost a little bit of time, obviously, to Bose, who came in and just drove straight through. So, maybe I misheard something, but we'll kind of watch it during the course of the race and see what everybody's doing. It may be that they actually do have to stop and take fuel. I'm not sure, so we'll have to just wait and see. But I think I was correct what I heard. So anyway, yeah, it's just going to be one of those that is one of those things, because this is a special event. Sometimes the rules don't necessarily get communicated, or I'm just old and tired. Either one, I'll take that too. So.
I won't go as far to say that, Charles, but as we see a fight between Jesus Rodriguez and Bobby West side by side going through the high banks, and you can see the gap between Overstreet and Green is actually separated a little bit as these two are still side by side. It looks like Bobby West is going to take that position with Rodriguez slotting in behind as well. And you can see Overstreet running up towards the top, running up towards a safer barrier and trying to break that slipstream that she's giving to Jason Green. So it's a little bit some aggressive moves we may see, especially when it comes time for the end of the race. We may see some drivers go for some bold moves to try and break that slipstream at any sort of cost. But getting back to the point I was going to mention in reference to those pit stops, whether these drivers have to stop in the box or whether they just need to drive through, and right as I say that, Green and Overstreet going side by side through the horseshoe on corner exit. They're side by side going on to this infield straightaway. Green is going to get the job done to move his way into P number 1. We just hit the halfway mark of this race now, so Jason Green is leading at the halfway mark in that number 160 car with another driver. I believe that's Grider coming down pit lane. He's already a lap down, so that's not too much of a factor for him. He may have had some damage from an incident we saw earlier on this race. I think we may be able to find a replay of what happened to Jason Grider heading his way through the bus stop. We saw him go off here earlier in that incident that also involved, I believe it was Jeff Jacobson, but nevertheless heading his way through the corner as well and bang into the wall. So that's a broken right rear for Jason Grider. Not ideal for his race to go in any way, shape, or form. Grider well far back.
Yeah, and he's just towed it back to the pits, and that's one of those. That's it's an easy mistake to make, just carrying too much speed into the bus stop, and then it's just because these cars don't have wings, you're relying on that mechanical grip, and it'll only give you so much. And so we saw what happens if you try and carry too much speed through there. You just end up looping the car around, backing it into the barrier, and it's a tow back to the pits now to get repairs.
And the fight continues between Jason Green and Megan Overstreet. They're still side by side going through the banking of turns 3 and 4 on the oval. 8, actually, I apologize, that's turn number 12 on the road course. They're still side by side now, heading their way into the tri-oval. I think it may be Megan Overstreet just barely edging him out, coming to the line. Actually, no, Jason Green pulling ahead a teeny tiny bit. Megan Overstreet actually dropping back as Stevie Ray is now coming down pit lane. Hopefully we can stay with this camera shot to see exactly what he does, whether he stops in the box or just drives through. And the point I was going to mention before you saw that fight between Overstreet and West start to heat up with some more drivers coming in, I believe Cathcart is pulled in as well. It's a matter of trying not to speed down pit lane. You can see he completely goes through all the pit boxes, so you don't need to pit in this race, but you still need to come down pit lane. And regardless of what you're trying to do down in the pits, you need to make sure you don't speed, because these Formula Ford cars don't have a pit lane speed limiter button at all. So it's just on the driver to try and maintain that speed limit coming down the pits, and if you get a teeny tiny bit wrong, you are going to get a race ending penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 40 seconds of stop and hold. So yeah, it's pretty much race done, unless even if you had somebody come in with you and it to be like a draft partner, you're not going to make that time up. So yeah, you got to be very careful and make sure that you keep don't get the speeding penalty on pit road. And it's going to be interesting. I'm starting to see that gap now between West and Green starting to close up. So these two cars that are in third and fourth are just getting enough of that enough toe on those front two, and the front two are doing enough battling that it's allowing this group to tighten back up. Is going to make this race for the win that much more intriguing.
That's a very great point you bring up there, Charles. That gap has diminished. So it was a 2-2 fight. It's now slowly turning into a 4-car peloton. That gap between Green and Overstreet, well, it's basically nothing. They're side by side, hanging their way through turn number 12. But that gap between these two and West has pretty much diminished in these last few laps. And with them going side by side, it has allowed those drivers a little bit farther back to close in, and they're still side by side, hang their way through into the tri-oval now. They may start to feel a little bit hot under their collars heading through now. Bobby West very, very close as they careen their way into turn number 1, with Ditchburn and Walker a little bit farther behind, coming down pit lane for their one and only time, 18.5 minutes into this race. So we are over the halfway mark, and Jason Green is in P2, Megan Overstreet in P1, and Bobby West, he started this race on the front row, started this race in second alongside our pole sitter Megan Overstreet. However, he dropped back like a rock early on, and ever since then, he's been locked steady in a dogfight between himself and Jesus Rodriguez. But with the battling that we saw between Overstreet and Green, as it looks like Bill Walker has actually stopped in his box. This is an interesting call from the driver of the 19 car. Maybe just a simple mistake or a miscommunication possibly in terms of what the rules are. We're seeing a whole lot of drivers see Josh Wilkie in as well. So with that taken care of, I wonder, are these drivers in the top 4 going to come down pit lane in the not too distant future? And if they do come down pit lane this time by, are they going to come in together, or do you think we're going to see some split strategies develop at the north end of the field?
I think my guess would be is going to be follow the leader. If the leader comes down the pit lane, then I think the other ones follow, or the ones behind could leave the leader out there stranded by themselves. But I think it's very interesting. I'm just kind of, you ever feel like you're being set up? I'm just kind of watching Megan, and she basically, as we see here, Green makes that pass coming into the bus stop, and she's been basically letting him, she's been going high and letting him take the lead coming out of the bus stop, coming down the NASCAR 4. And then she's able to slipstream back past him at the start finish line. It's almost like there's a little strategy being worked out on what gap you need in order to make that pass and make it stick to get the race win. As we see West now deciding, you know what, I'm going to come out here and lead for a bit.
We are in the final 10 minutes of this race, so I think that pressure is ramping up yet again, and maybe Jason Green had a slowdown because he was in the leader running up towards it with Megan Overstreet. However, that gap grew to about, I think it was nearly 3/4 of a second, heading their way to the start-finish line to begin lap number 11. They're still pretty close as the likes of Jacobson, Carvalho, Stevens, and Barry have come down pit lane right behind, so that 4-pack has come down into the pits, and they're stopping against her. Carvalho stopping in his box. These are mistakes from these drivers, or maybe it's just a simple miscommunication, but regardless, Philip Barry and Pedro Carvalho is stopped in their box. It's a pretty big miscommunication. Regardless, Stevens is now back out on track. He's going to be a little bit farther behind this man, Julian Ditchburn, running in P6 right now. He may try and make a P5 with Jeff Jacobson exiting the track now in P number 5. And that number 40 car, he's going to have slightly colder tires on. That's one thing to mention, especially when it comes to that lead pack fight with Jason Green pushing as hard as he absolutely absolutely can to try and salvage that lead and hold on to it whenever he got past Megan Overstreet. Maybe start to cook those tires, because we mentioned during that qualifying session, with pretty high track temperatures, despite the fact we're under the lights, as Julian Ditchburn runs a little bit wide, hang through turn number 6. Maybe these drivers are starting to feel the burn, literally and metaphorically, when it comes to those tire temperatures, as yet again, Overstreet and West swap for positions a little bit farther up the road, as it was a pretty big snap from Jacobson exiting turn at number 6. The tires may be playing a big role in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I was watching Jacobson when he came through, and he's just on the edge of control. He's like he's fighting the car. I don't know if there's a setup issue or something with the car, but it's just he's just struggling just a little bit. And Ditchford's able to make the pass on the high side. So we'll see if Jacobson gets the draft and tries to draft back up past him before leading turn 1.
There's still a whole lot left to be decided in this race, with about 7.5 minutes left to go. Who's going to make up that final top 5 spot? Is it going to be Ditchburn, or is it going to be Jacobson? And how are the top 4 going to shake out? They're still covered by barely any air. However, Rodriguez, it must be said, Jesus Rodriguez has dropped back a little bit, with about 1 second separating himself and Megan Overstreet, who's now running in P at number 3. This is the farthest down the pack. We've seen Megan Overstreet all throughout this race. She has had a stranglehold on it ever since it started about 23 minutes ago. But we'll see who may hold off in this fight. Is it going to be Bobby West? Is it going to be Jason Green? Is it going to be Megan Overstreet? Or perhaps Jesus Rodriguez is going to pull a rabbit out of the hat? He hasn't led so far in this race, and yet again Pedro Carvalho has come down pit lane, so maybe serving a drive-through penalty or some kind of penalty, a stop and go perhaps. Maybe he sped down in the pits when he came in not very long ago. Pedro Carvalho yet again coming into the pits and stopping in his box. I'll take a look to see if he has a black flag next to his name. Yes, he does, and he overshoots, adding insult to injury. He overshoots his pit box as our buddy Josh Wilkie is going off the track, heading through turn number 4, but it is a penalty for Pedro Carvalho, which is adding insult to injury. He stopped in his box and was well far away from the drivers he was battling with throughout the first half of this race, but with that penalty, again, he's pretty much done for.
Yeah, that's a tough penalty, and I'm just kind of watching the time ramp up. It looks like it's a speeding pit. It's a 40-second, I think, on pit entry, and it's a 25-second on pit exit. So it looks like it's a 40-second penalty, or not. It's actually growing. So maybe he said, you know what, I'm not coming back from this. So it may be the end of his. Nope, there he goes. He's coming out now. So looks like he's served his penalty and he's back out on the track. As we've got these 4 now, Rodriguez has done a good job, and Overstreet's come into the pits by herself.
That's an interesting call from Megan Overstreet. We'll see if it works out. She's going to have the racetrack pretty much all to herself. She's not going to make the mistake of stopping in her box. She knows the rules and she knows what to do. And with Green and West battling hard a little bit farther up the road, and Rodriguez involved in that fight as well, if those 3 start battling hard and duking it out, trying to squabble for those top 3 spots with Overstreet out of the picture, maybe Megan would have a fantastic shot of clawing up that time. If those drivers battle hard, they're going to slow themselves up dramatically. So Megan Overstreet, she's going to have a fantastic shot to win this race. We'll just have to see what these drivers running in the top 3 do as well. They have not come in for their allotted run down pit lane, and they're covered by barely any air. Only 0.8 of a second hang their way through turn at number 6 on lap number 13. We have less than 5 minutes left to go, so they have to come in. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So we're going to see Jason Green leading them back on to the tri-oval now, with West right behind. I think it's going to continue this game of leapfrog that we see and we've seen all throughout this Formula Ford race. Jesus Rodriguez is going to have the strongest slipstream of them all, with those 2 going side by side. Jesus Rodriguez may have an Osagod shot of taking the lead and possibly the win in this race. And you can see Green aggressively pursuing that slipstream from the back of Bobby West's car and nearly cut off Jesus Rodriguez here. That was very close to contact as they head their way through turn at number 8, now into Le Mans chicane on lap number 13. Only 4 minutes left to go. Let's see if they come down pit lane this time by.
Yep, we're going to see. They don't have many opportunities left. It's going to be, I think it's got to be this lap. I don't think they can come down on the white flag. Well, they definitely can't come down on the checkered. So I think maybe they can come down on the white flag, but it looks like Green is falling back. So I think he may be coming in this time. So let's see if I'm right here.
Oop, I think we have
Yep,
some
there.
heavy hitters. Yes,
Yep.
there we go. They're all coming down pit lane, and you can see Jason Green carrying a whole lot of speed there, all kinds of locked up, heading into the corner. Jason Green carrying a whole lot of speed, heading down pit lane. We'll see how they shake out compared to Megan Overstreet. That gap is only about 14.9 seconds with them trundling slowly down in the pits, and Megan Overstreet absolutely flat out on the racetrack. And yet again, it should be point Megan Overstreet. I think she's going to be able to take the lead of this race. The pit lane speed limit doesn't end for a long time. It's going to end in about another 50 feet time, and you can see Megan Overstreet blows their metaphorical doors off. So Megan Overstreet not having to battle hard, not having to lift off to pick up anyone's slipstream. She has jumped into the lead of this race. However, that lead that she has is still not comfortable. We have 3 minutes left to go in this race, less than 3 minutes left to go. In fact, as Jeff Jacobson has gone for a spin, hang through turn number 1, things go from bad to worse for the driver of the number 40 car as he's dropped back. But that gap between Overstreet and Rodriguez only about a half a second with less than 3 minutes left to go here. Usually that would be fairly comfortable, but here at this track with a vast majority of the laps spent flat out, that is not a comfortable margin at all. And here's a replay of what happened to Jeff Jacobson, nearly taking out Ditchburn as well, but just a simple self-spin for Jacobson. Hang through turn number 1, but getting back to that point between that top 4 fight of Overstreet, Rodriguez, and Bobby West along with Jason Green, that's going to be an absolute dogfight. Any of those drivers can take the checkered flag here.
Oh yeah, for sure. That 2 seconds between those 4 cars is not enough. I don't think that gaps are going to be enough that they can't or slip their way back up and tighten that group back up. As we already see, Rodriguez is moving up now. He's down to 0.2 of a second. West is still kind of hanging back there, about a second back. And so yeah, it's just one of those. It's going to come down to the last run down the NASCAR oval, tri-oval, to the finish line to see who's going to win this race.
I think we heard last week from some of the drivers we had a chat with at the end of last week's broadcast that you really don't want to be leading and coming on to that final flat out blast to conclude this race. But Megan Overstreet, she's in the lead, and that gap between herself and Jesus Rodriguez hasn't really gone down too much. Or as I say that, nearly halves of my time talking, they're going to be side by side. They're taking the white, so we have 1 lap to go from this vRunoffs 41st edition. With the Formula Fords, it's going to be tense between all of these drivers. Overstreet is leading them. You've got Jesus Rodriguez battling hard, possibly trying to take the lead. Heading into turn number 4, they're going to be side by side. Overstreet on the inside, Rodriguez on the outside. They make contact heading into turn number 4. These drivers giving it absolutely everything they possibly can. Bobby West is still involved, as is Jason Green. These 4 drivers separated by less than 0.7 of a second. Hang through turn number 5 for the final time. Overstreet, she's going to be leading them heading on to the oval for the final time. That may not be the good position to be in. However, they may blow her doors off heading into the Le Mans chicane, and if she isn't leading coming out of there, I think she's going to have an honest-to-God shot to win. And one thing is for sure, all these drivers, they're going to be bending the floor pan with how hard their feet are going to be smashed on that throttle pedal. Overstreet is leading. I'm heading through turn number 8. Jesus Rodriguez in P2 and Bobby West in P3, and Green actually dropping back a little bit. Maybe he's just saving up a run coming to the checkered flag in just a few moments time. We'll see what Jesus Rodriguez does. Jason Green saving up that dress, so this is an interesting call from the driver of the 160 car. We'll just have to see if it works out. Overstreet, she's going to be leading them heading into the bus stop for the final time. All these drivers have a fantastic shot of winning it. Who is it going to be? Overstreet, I think she's going to be a sitting duck. Jesus Rodriguez, he is going to be flat out. Bobby West is already trying to take it flat out. We're starting to see Megan Overstreet trying to save any sort of hope she has of winning this race, taking an aggressive line on corner exit to try and break up that slipstream. And Rodriguez and West are going side by side with Overstreet. She is a sitting duck. You can see the speed differential between all these drivers. Overstreet is defending for her life, but it's not going to be enough. They're going to be 3 wide coming to the line. West on the outside, Rodriguez on the inside. It's a photo finish here with Jason Green on the inside, and it's Bobby West winning it. Barely any air separating those drivers in the top 4. Less than a 10th after 31 minutes of racing action. And oh my God, Charles, we were expecting a close finish, and I think we just got it there. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. That's kind of Daytona in a nutshell right there. Is you get a single make race, and it's just, especially with these cars that draft so well, it's just so tight all the way to the end, as we see Cathcart kind of bouncing off the wall just a little bit. But yeah, 76 thousandths of a second between the top four. As we see, that was a very close one there, as Josh Wilkie tried to make a run at the very end and continues on through the oval. And I'm not sure. Yeah, he's just said, you know what, I'm keeping my foot down. And there's a good jump.
There we go, and into the wall. That's a big hit for Josh Wilkie. Oh my God! Hopefully he's still with us after that race. That was, I gotta say though, I don't know what you give that, Charles, but that was, I think, an 8 out of 10 jump. I saw some sparks flying and some dust getting kicked up as he ran through the infield section there. Oh man, that was a very, I think that's probably the highest we've seen a car go flying throughout this season. And we've seen many aerial acrobatics from this past season of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Championship. But here at the Runoffs, the grandest race of them all, we just saw the grandest jump from our old buddy Josh Wilkie. That was nicely played from him.
Absolutely, yeah. Go back to the finish as we were watching that. Green had a good run. He timed it really, really well, and kind of got blocked by Rodriguez just a little bit on his way up. Was able to take it down to the bottom and try and make it and made it very, very close at the end, obviously. But Overstreet did a really good job of trying to swap lanes and kind of split the draft so nobody could get too much of a run. Or I don't think she would have. It would have been that close for her. I think they would just all went by her. So great driving by all four of those drivers, and yeah, it's just amazingly close at the very end.
That was intense coming to the checkered flag. I thought for a very brief moment that Jason Green was going to end up taking it. I think if he took to the grass coming to the checkered flag, that may have been his race to win. But here are the results. Bobby West, the Brit in the number 89 car, started this race in second, dropped back a little bit early on, but he ends up claiming his way back up towards the front of the field and ends up winning it over Jesus Rodriguez in P number 2. A pretty good result from the driver of the 76 car as well. Jason Green ends up in P3 and Megan Overstreet in 4th. Those four drivers separated by 0.074 of a second, with the gap between West and Rodriguez being only 0.025. Incredibly close stuff at the end of this race. Stevie Ray ends up in a distant 5th. We didn't really talk about him too much towards the end of that race. A very fantastic P5 from the series admin, Jeff Jacobson. Even with that spin, he ended up in 6th, so nicely played from the driver of the number 40 car. Paul Stevens ends up in 7th. Dana Bose in 8th. Brad Cathcart with that pretty big contact. I think he and Bose were bump drafting, hang their way to the checkered flag, and that went horribly, horribly wrong for Brad Cathcart as he hit the wall and just came up so close between himself and Josh Wilkie coming to the line, and that rounds out your top 10.
Yeah, Bill Walker finished in 11th. Phil Berry finished in 12th. Paul Jackson in 13th. Gary Wolbolt in 14th. Nathan Bowden in 15th. Pedro Carvalho in 16th. Heinz Holdinger in 17th. Julian Ditchburn in 18th, one lap down. Jason Grider in 19th, and Benjamin Harris, who's just here for the SR, finishes in 20th.
Sadly for Benjamin, he didn't really get too much safety rating with that incident he had at the very beginning of the race. But we have some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. And just one more thought on those results. I'm not sure what happened to Julian Ditchburn towards the end of that race. He was running, I think, 7th, but sadly for him, he dropped back like a rock and ended up in P18. Must have had some sort of incident. But we have some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area to have a chat with us. Charles, who do you like to talk to?
Well, let's talk to our race winner, Bobby West. Bobby, congratulations on winning the vRunoffs in the Formula Ford. Pretty exciting ending to that race, wouldn't you think?
Sorry, I just realised I just jumped in the spec race. Hold on. Yeah, it was good. I didn't want to be. Well, I said last week, don't lead into the chicane. So that was my goal, and I don't know. I didn't want to have Jason ahead of me because I didn't think I'd get past all three of them. So had to make that decision at turn 1 and keep him there. But it was good. I didn't really think I'd do it at one point because Megan gave Jesus the draft on the inside, and I thought, oh, I'm stuffed now. But yeah, well done to me.
I was watching Megan, and she was kind of trying to split the draft a little bit, so neither one of you could get enough of a run. Didn't quite pay off for, but 76 thousandths of a second between the top 4 cars. That's really what you come to expect when you're running at Daytona.
Yeah, absolutely. So I expect it to be the same in this. Same story. Don't lead into the chicane, and it should be a close finish. But it was good fun. It was a good race. I thought we lost them early, so it was good that we managed to get catch up with Megan and Jason that mid race. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I'll let you go. Congratulations, and I'll let you give any thanks or shout outs that you want to do it, and we'll let you get back in the Spec Racer.
Just thanks to Stevie for organising and yourselves for commentating all the time, every week. So it's much appreciated.
All right, thank you, Bobby. Congratulations.
That was Bobby West, our winner from this Formula Ford race, and we have Megan Overstreet waiting in the interview waiting area, but we only have about 10 minutes until we grab the green flag in the Spec Racer Ford race that we have coming up. That race was absolutely intense, surprisingly intense, it must be said, from the Formula Fords, but the Spec Racer Fords, those absolute draft monsters are coming up. We have a 40-minute race in front of our face. It's going to be intense, so if you're watching the stream here on Apex Racing TV, stick around because that Spec Racer Ford race is going to be nuts, and we'll be with that race after these messages.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to today's broadcast of the 41st vRunoffs here on Apex Racing TV, and we're now halfway through today's festivities. With the Formula 4s already in the books, we can now move on to the Spec Racer Fords. We are expecting this race to be absolutely ridiculous, with these draft monsters probably set to give us a dogfight over the next 40 minutes that we have in this upcoming race for you. So, Charles, would you like to explain to the viewers the reason why we're expecting this race to be absolutely intense?
Well, if you just watched the last race, you saw what effect the draft had with those cars. In these cars, it's probably double that. So, if we talk about you don't want to be the first car in, you want to be the second car going into the bus stop. Here, you actually may want to be the third car going into the bus stop in a 3-car group. It's just the draft is that profound with these cars. Are just very they're just very aerodynamically similar, and so when they get together, it's amazing what how much time you can make up from a second back. You could be, we saw it earlier in the season at Homestead, where they were 0.8 of a second back, or a couple seasons ago, 0.8 of a second back, and able to make it to the start finish line first in the span of 3/4 of a mile or something like that. So the draft should have a massive effect on this race, and if we don't have any major incidents, I fully expect to see a repeat of what we had in the Formula Ford race.
Well, we're off the back of a fantastically entertaining season. I'm sure here at the Runoffs it is going to be no different. And speaking of this past season, Season 2 of 2024, as I just said, it was crazy. We had some fantastic races week in and week out. I'm still thinking about that very strange meeting at another Roval, that being the Phoenix Road Oval course, the legacy version, which doesn't even exist in real life anymore. But here, with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors season coming to a close, I think we'll talk about some of the champions and some of the top 3 runners. So in Spec 1, it was pretty intense all throughout the season, and Marco Pinero, the Italian, ended up being the one taking the checkered flag on the season to win the championship in Spec 1. And then right behind in P2 was Joao Tabino, who's still probably kicking himself after that spin he had at Winton a few weeks ago that really cost him a shot of winning that race and possibly winning the championship as well. Jason Green, who ended up in the top 3 of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors runoffs, ends up in the top 3 in Spec 1 in the Spec Racer Ford runoffs as well. My apologies, not the runoffs, the season standings. He ended up 3rd in Spec 1. Then Spec 2 was Philip Berry taking the season championship. Pedro Carvalho was in 2nd, and Paul Jackson Paul Jackson was in 3rd. And then moving on to Masters, Jeff Frister was the one taking the championship there. Jurek Mani in P2 and Tom Gradwell ended up 3rd in that championship. Our congratulations go out to all the champions across the 3 categories off this season of great racing action from start to finish. We had an awesome schedule of races. I think here under the lights, it's an interesting spectacle that we haven't really had here. This is the first ever time we've run the vRunoffs under the lights and produced some pretty good racing in those Formula Fords. These SRFs are going to be no different. And one thing that we were going to mention, if these drivers were all qualifying together, was going to be the draft. That's going to be huge in this race we have coming up, but it's not going to be a factor in this qualifying session with them all qualifying separately and all by themselves. So Charles, we'd like to go through how things are shaking out in this qualifying session right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Green is leading qualifying right now with a 206.05. Bobby West in 2nd. He's only about 12 hundredths of a second back. Overstreet 0.2 back. Carvalho and Favini round out your top 5. And it's just going to be, I think the times will get a little bit tighter during the course of this qualifying session. But it's a good move by Stevie is to really take the draft out of it for qualifying. You're qualifying based on your own pace and not what kind of run you can get off a car behind, in front. So it changes up the strategy a little bit. So now it's going to be a matter of, if you think you're pretty quick in the draft, you're going to have to do everything you can if you get a back wall to hang in the draft and try and work your way up toward the front.
And even without the draft, the field is still incredibly close. Currently, Grider in P17 as our last place qualifier, 3.3 seconds off, which considering this track is fairly large and we're setting north of 2-minute lap times, only 3 seconds separating the entire field is still incredibly close. So we'll see how these drivers can do in their final qualifying times with only a minute left to go. Here's Andre Favini crossing the line as Megan Overstreet moves up into P number 1, and Favini, the Swede, does not improve in the number 27 car. Megan Overstreet improves on her qualifying time to slot into P1 at a 2 minute 6.021. That is a very good lap time, and still, as I just said, very, very close. Overstreet and Green separated by 0.028 of a second, with Bobby West only a 10th.5 behind as well. Pedro Carvalho in 4th, a little bit farther back of the 3 drivers right in front of him. However, he's, in terms of qualifying pace, he's effectively in no man's land with about 0.3 of a second separating himself and Bobby West, and another 0.3 of a second separating himself and Jeff Jacobson, who's in P number 5. So as we approach the end of this qualifying session, 18 cars to set a qualifying time. It'll be interesting to see if we see a bit more chaos and a bit more attrition than we saw in those Formula 4s. What do you think, Charles?
I think actually it's going to be a little less because these cars can take a little bit of bumping a little easier than the Formula cars. So it may be that these cars, you know, do a little beating and banging, and it won't affect the race overall. It will obviously, if you crunch the nose, will affect your pace in the draft. So they're going to have to be very careful of that.
And we got the starting grid for you now. Megan Overstreet, as she did in the Formula Ford race, is going to be leading them to green with a 2 minute 6.021 lap time. Jason Green of just barely any time separating those two, making up your front row. Bobby West in P3. Pedro Carvalho, the Brazilian, will be starting this race in 4th. Jeff Jacobson in 5th. Andre Favini in P number 6. In P number 7, we have Phil Berry in the 888 car. Daniel L. Wood, the Mexican driver, is going to be starting this race in 8th. Jesus Rodriguez in 9th, and Brad Cathcart will round out your top 10.
Yeah, in P11 is our league organizer, Stevie Ray. Adam Bradshaw in 12th. In 13th is Stephen Healy, the Canadian. Paul Jackson in 14th. Gary Wolbolt, 15th. Patrick Farragher in 16th. Jason Grider in 17th. Nathan Bowden is the last car to set a time in 18th. And jumping in at the very last minute, Antonio Race in 19th and Josh Wilkie rounding out your 20-car grid.
So that is the grid that we have for you here this afternoon. 20 cars, however, you can still have a very fun and enjoyable party with 20 people. And we're going to see that put on full display over this 40-minute race that we have coming up. That's going to start in just a few moments' time. I believe the field is still on the back straightaway. Another sure and pace lap here, so we have a little bit of time, the calm before the storm, before all hell breaks loose. I got to imagine turn number 1 is going to be very hectic. The Formula Ford car is a little bit slower than the Spec, a little bit, well, not slower, they're a little bit faster. However, they're a little bit smaller than the Spec Racer Ford race cars, so we'll see what kind of argy-bargy action we may see when they hit the tight confines of the infield in just a few moments' time. You can see the field now stopped. We're just waiting for a few more cars to join up on the starting grid, and then we'll be able to get things up and rolling. Pedro Carvalho has not joined them, as you can see from the pit graphic there on the outside. He has not stopped in the box. Antonio Reese as well has not joined them, so we're already short of 2 cars already. So we're going to have 18 starters. However, 18 cars, we're still going to have an awesome show from the Spec Racer Fords here from the 41st vRunoffs. So we run this, I think it's 4 times every single season, every single season, 4 times every single year, every single week 13 at the conclusion of the iRacing season. Stevie does an amazing job putting this event together, and this year was no different off the back of a very interesting running of the vRunoffs, a 40th vRunoffs at Okayama, with rain playing a huge factor in that Formula Ford race. You had to one-up it somehow, and running under the lights here at the Daytona International Speedway was a fantastic way to do that. We'll wait for these drivers to get that start for you in just a few moments' time. It feels like agony waiting for that Porsche pace car to go down pit lane. Some drivers already shuffling around and maybe playing some mind games. We mentioned that throughout the Formula Ford race, and we'll mention it here as well. Maybe some mental trickery may play a role in how things shake out in this 40-minute race we have coming up. up with pit stops to deal with as well. That Porsche pace car has made that left-hand turn to go down pit lane. The field is now in the hands of Megan Overstreet, leading them to green. The green flag is down. The drivers are on their way, but this time Megan Overstreet doesn't have a very good start. Jason Green does. They're going to be side by side, heading their way into turn number 1, with Bobby West looking to pick up the pieces a little bit farther behind as well. Lots of drivers going side by side to turn number 1. I believe that's Pedro Carvalho finally joining this race. He's trundling his way down pit lane. He is going to be on the back foot massively, but it's Megan Overstreet leading them into turn number 4 for the first time by Jason Green in P2, and Bobby West maybe trying to go for the move heading into turn number 4, not close enough to slide his way into second. A good start from Jeff Jacobson. He slid his way into 4th, with Philip Berry making up the final of the top 5 runners. Some drivers still going side by side a little bit farther in the back, but as a whole, the field is actually single filed at the very beginning of this race. A little bit surprising to me, Charles. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a little surprising, but, pretty smart. You want to get the tires up to temp and just, kind of get settled in to the start of the race. So it's a good call by everybody, and we'll just let it all work out as we get here to the as we're getting back onto the NASCAR oval. Then you'll start seeing things happening. So we'll see how aggressive people are going to be with the drafting.
They're going to risk it for the biscuit. They want to take that checkered flag to win here at the vRunoffs. Megan Overstreet looking for redemption. She was a dominant driver in the Formula Fords earlier. She's going to try and look to win here in the Spec Racer Fords. Jason Green, another fantastic driver, ended up in the top 3 in both the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords this past season. He is a known quantity here in this series. And Bobby West, after winning in the Formula Fords earlier on this afternoon, he looks to try and get the double as Philip Berry has taken that Joker lap layout heading through the Le Mans chicane. Not sure what happened there. May have just outbroke himself heading into the corner. We may be able to find a replay to see what in the world happened there to Philip Berry. He's going to be dropping down like a rock, serving a slowdown after that lawn mowing action heading through the Le Mans chicane. Stevie Ray, meanwhile, he is feeling incredibly racy, and oh my God, that was nearly a massive crash. They're being a bagging going through the oval section. That was nearly a disastrous moment between Stevie Ray, who's actually dropped back, maybe a little bit of damage. Four wide, they're making contact and spinning around at the tri-oval. That is Brad Cathcart in the middle of that. Jesus Rodriguez involved as well. Daniel Wood, you see him in the number 28 car. He was one of the ping-ponging fight all throughout that. Oh my God, we've Jeff Jacobson nearly on his lid, and oh my God, he's gonna get T-boned by Brad Cathcart. Whoa, my God, as we see the front end of Brad Cathcart's car pop off his car like a misshapen Lego. What the heck has happened in the past 30 seconds? It was going so smooth. And then when we round out lap 1, all hell breaks loose all throughout the field.
Yeah, so we're going to get Jacobson coming down into turn 1. And so far, he tried to catch the car. He's going into a sideways. Oh, yeah.
My God.
There's a little bit of a hump, as you can tell. Oh, and the 905, I think, just missed the corner as well, and thought he was going to be able to recover the car, and did not realize that Jacobson was going to be there sideways.
And you can see a lot of damaged Spec Racer Ford race cars. We have a whole lot of replays to look at, and you can see Jason Grider stopped on the inside of turn number 6. I'm not sure if he's trying to act like an apex cone or something like that. No, he's back rolling. Well, I wonder if he's okay, there we go. I thought he was going to try and take someone out there. I was about to be very, very worried about what was happening in the infield section of this course. And all that chaos, Megan Overstreet has actually broken away from Jason Green. The gap is pretty big between the drivers at the north end of the field. However, we're not even at the end of lap number 2. We've seen a whole lot of chaos break out. I wonder if we can possibly load up a replay of the drama that happened going through the tri-oval at the end of lap number 1. 4 wide. I was stunned about them going 4 wide. I was stunned about them being and banging and roughing each other up. And then I saw them wrecking. Oh my God, that was probably the most overwhelmed I've been on any single broadcast I've done here on Apex Racing TV. Pedro Carvalho and all that chaos, he's moved his way up into the top 15, battling hard with Healy for that P13 spot. The Brazilian running down in 14th. We'll see what he can do between now and the end of this. Is Stephen Healy, who was one of the cars that was involved in that 4 wide action. I think he was possibly stuck on the outside, but regardless, that was the tail end of that. And this is what happened. Wood on the outside. That's Jesus Rodriguez up towards the top. Brad Cathcart. Oh, it started off with a little bit of beating and banging and roughing each other up between Cathcart and Healy. on the bottom of that 4-wide action going down to hit that start-finish line. And you can see a little bit farther down the road, Healy spun, and that's what sent Brad Cathcart winding that bang right into the side of Jeff Jacobson's Spec Racer Ford. That was basically, there's multiple incidents converging into one, but still, so far in this race, we have 17 cars still on the racetrack. You can see Pedro Carvalho with a damaged front end on that Spec Racer Ford race car, and Antonio Races rejoined us. He's in P17 and not very far off of Jesus Rodriguez in 16th. But man, I feel like I need to rewire my brain a little bit after that drama we saw at the beginning of lap number 1 and the start of lap number 2. I don't think we've seen many Spec Racer Fords flip in this series, and we nearly just had that with Jeff Jacobson at the start of lap 2. That was very strange.
That was very strange. Yeah, there's that bump is out there on the outside of turn 1 in the grass, and obviously you saw what happens if you take that with speed. It sends your car skyward. And I'm going to say, I think the reason that Overstreet, I was kind of watching, I think the reason Overstreet jumped out to that lead, I think both West and Green, I saw them go high coming out of the bus stop, which usually an indicator meaning they got to slow down. Just missed the apex, cut the corner. iRacing said, nope, you got to slow down. You cut too much of the corner. And so you have to go high and try and bleed that speed off the racing line. And I think that's what allowed Overstreet to get that gap. Now, however, the problem with that is you get out front by yourself, and as soon as two cars get together, they're faster than you. And it's a pretty easy effort to just track you down. As you can see, they're already cutting that gap down. It's down to about 1.6. So they'll be back with her in no time flat, and we'll be back to a big race again. The three cars, Overstreet, West, and Green up front. We'll see if any of the other cars can get organized. As we see Wood a little sideways, managed to catch it. Oh, Carvalho, very sorry about that. Yeah, just as we see it. Oh, who's that over there with the yeah, thanks. Oh, that's our buddy Josh with the looks like he had a little damage. And we got Bowden on the infield here in turn 4. There's cars everywhere. It's chaos.
Good Lord, we were expecting this race to be a little bit more hectic than what we saw in that Formula Ford race, and we're seeing that be put on full display, and we're not even 10 minutes in. This was happened to Philip Berry and Andre Favini on corner exit. Berry spins, and okay, does he hit a car on rejoin possibly? That's just a simple spin, and that's a car farther off in the back. So Philip Berry just rejoins the track fairly smooth. The driver of the Triple 8 car rejoins without any further incident, but there's a whole lot of stuff going on. I think Josh just ran flat out into the wall, so I think he just decided to call it a day early. That was we've seen some strange activities. We haven't seen an alien abduction yet, knowing Marlon, I probably just jinxed it. But besides that, we've seen just about everything from this race so far. A Spec Racer Ford jumping. We've seen drivers battle 4 wide, and this I think may have been what happened to our buddy Josh Wilkie. I think he may have gotten a piece of an incident that happened a little bit farther up the road. No, he spins going through turn number 1. And I think, how did he pick up that front end damage? Possibly an unsafe rejoin, maybe. And that's what happened. Yeah. Was that? I think that was Wood, Daniel Wood, and you could see that front end flying, but still small. Oh man. Wood involved in multiple incidents so far in this race. A small little mistake from our buddy Josh Wilkie snowballs into a major piece of drama at the beginning of this race. One of many that we've seen so far.
Yeah, one of many. And yeah, it's turn 1. It's such a hard corner because you're coming off the travel, off the banking, which is another reason we saw the incident with Healy. He came off down below the yellow line, and the angle of banking changes. And it has a tendency to kick the car back up. And if you're 4 wide, there's nowhere for you to go except into the side of another car and start a chain reaction. So same thing with Josh coming off the banking, going into turn 1, hard braking zone, braking point. The car's unsettled, and you're doing everything you can do to get the car slowed down to turn. And you get that spin, and it's pretty easy to do. It happens a lot. And then there's just nowhere for everybody else to go because they're all trying to do the same thing. So it's, he did a good job to try and get the car right around, but just, too much traffic coming through there and not much really you can do about it. The other option would have been just tow, but that's the end of your race if you do.
I'll I'll tell you what, as we see another driver around, that's Favini. He was running solidly inside the top 5, and sadly for him, it's gone wrong. He may lose out on spots with Jackson and Wobold catching up here in the not-too-distant future. This is insane. I think regardless of how some of these drivers may view the incidents, I think we're going to be seeing some very upset Spec Racer 4 drivers when everything is said and done here. Paul Jackson looks like he's going to be pretty happy picking up the spot of the very slow Favini coming down onto the back straightaway now. Some 3-wide action right behind. Brad Cathcart is still out there on the track. I think he may be crabbing a little bit, though. Regardless, they're battling very, very hard. That's Barry involved in that as well. Looks like the leader of that pack as we see Patrick, oh my god, very sideways, heading through the Le Mans chicane right behind Healy, and he nearly got rear-ended by Barry after that small little sideways snap. He had to get out of it dramatically. Wobold was involved in that. Megan Overstreet has come in for a very early stop, so we saw drivers waiting until the final 5 minutes of the Formula Ford race to come down pit lane. Megan Overstreet making that early call to stop in the box, so we'll see her trundling her way down in the pits, and some more drivers responding as well. That's Healy coming down pit lane as well. Megan Overstreet pitted from the lead of the race. I believe she has not stopped in her box, though, so yet again, like it was in the Formula Ford race, they're just running down the pits on some hard battling at the north end of the field. This is a 772 car. Favini involved in that as well. I think Favini may have had another mistake, this time hanging through turn number 1. This is a train. This is absolutely insane in this Spec Racer Ford race. We just clicked over the 10-minute mark of this race. We're not even halfway in. We've just seen so much stuff happen, and there's already multiple drivers out of this race, many with damage, and there's still so much left to be decided. This is insane.
It is, and look at Overstreet. She came in, took her drive through, and came out in P4. She's 13 seconds behind the leader, and she's got a big group of cars behind her that are still not quite close enough to give her a push. But if they manage to stay together and she falls back a little bit, it will be a big group. She'll be able to lead around this track and should make her lap
Favini
time
around again.
Yeah, Favini around again. Turn 6, turn 7, getting out of the infield back to the trial was so difficult. It's just a camber, it's bumps. There's a curve there that sometimes lots of cars, not just the Spec Racers cars, but GT cars, prototypes, that just struggle with. And it's just a very, very difficult corner. It's more difficult than it looks like. It looks like it's pretty straightforward, but it's really not.
That corner is very, very hard, but this is the 3rd or 4th spin that we've seen from Andre Favini in the just not too distant past. It's been the past like lap and a half. We've seen so many incidents from him. I wonder if there's some sort of damage on that Spec Racer Ford race car of his. We saw another sideways moment for the driver of the 772 car, heading his way through the Le Mans chicane. They're now 3 wide. Antonio Reese on the outside with Phil Barry in the middle. 3 wide, heading their way through NASCAR 4, and they're still going to be side by side, heading their way into the trioval in just a few moments time. All these drivers covered by barely any air. Barry, after that 3 wide action, hang through NASCAR 3. He's like, nope, I've had enough of this. I'm backing out. I'm coming in for my pit stop. Rodriguez and Favini have come in as well. Favini, I won't be too shocked if he stops in his box. The overheating tires may be part of the reason why he's had multiple spins in the span of about a minute and a half. Well, probably about 2.5 minutes, but still, regardless, the Favini, his car dropping like it's broken in half or something like that. Very, very strange that we've seen from one of the best drivers in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warrior Series for him to struggle so much so early on into this race. Seeing uncharacteristic mistakes from some drivers, some interesting strategy calls as well. Megan Overstreet only 13 seconds back of our leader Bobby West, and I'm curious if the battling between West and Green, which I'm sure is still continuing, they're covered by only a 1/10 and a half, hanging their way through NASCAR 3 right now. If these drivers battle way too hard, Overstreet, she's going to have a very clean run between now and the end.
Yeah, I think they're pretty content to just look, as you see here, Jason Green just bump dragged. He said, you know what, I'll just push you for a little bit. We'll see if we can log some laps like this and see if we can stretch that gap. Overstreet's trying to track down Stevie Ray and have her a draft partner, and she can absolutely push Stevie. And 2 cars in that configuration are faster than 1. So any combination that is together like that, they're going to be setting some really, really quick laps. And so I'm sure Megan is anxious to try and make up the ground to Stevie and see if they can work together and push forward a little bit faster.
Teamwork makes a dream work, and even though they aren't teammates, actually, Russ, I say that they're going to be going side by side, hang their way into the tri-oval in just a few moments' time. Green and West battling hard. Green now jumping his way up into P number 1. We're going to hit the 15-minute mark of this race in only 3 seconds time. It's not the halfway mark like it was in the Formula Fords. However, these drivers are slowly bringing in those laps, and Healy, I think, has had some sort of mistake as he's actually left the session. So another driver disconnecting from this race. That'll make it 3 thus far. Carvalho and Healy, the drivers, have off so far. I think our buddy Josh Wilkie, I believe he's still in the session. However, he's just stopped in the pits and probably having a beer after how things went for him in this Spec Racer Ford race. And oh my God, Paul Jackson going for a front flip. Oh my God, multiple times. Is he going to stick the landing? Wow. Yes, he does. Paul Jackson with a major accident on the exit of turn number 1. That bump of doom catching out another driver here. This time it's Jackson.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's exactly what we're going to see. Yep, just deep into one, runs wide, comes through the grass, and here we go, up and over. Front flips, looks like 4 of them, and lands back on his wheels. Now, I'm assuming that he says, will this car actually still drive or not? Nope, okay, back to the pits we go.
If he drove that thing back to the pits, it would have been a show of absolute balls. And speaking of balls, we may have a ballsy move from Bobby West to retake the lead of the race. This time heading into the bus stop. We don't see too many drivers go for a move heading into the bus stop, especially at the north end of the field. However, Bobby West looking to buck that trend. This has been possibly the most bizarre race I've ever covered here on Apex Racing TV, and we just had a driver do, like, what was it, 2 or 3 front flips? What's the final count on that, Charles? Was it 2? Was it 3?
I think it was 4, actually. I think he actually managed
4,
to get
okay.
4, yeah. Yeah, the last one was a little slow, but, I mean, he stuck the landing, and, yeah, just had to throw it back to the pits because, obviously, that's race done. But, yeah, that's the first time I've seen that much action there in the outside of turn 1. Normally you don't see them that often. As we see Stevie Ray says, I'm coming down to the pits. Probably not helpful to Megan because she was hopefully looking for some draft help there to try and make up some time. She's actually losing time to that front 2. They're doing a really good job of leapfrogging each other to try and keep their momentum up and to keep maximizing that draft. And it's working. So they're managing to stretch a gap. And my guess is going to be is when they come in together, they'll come in together probably. And when they come back out, they're probably going to be 2 or 3 seconds ahead of Overstreet.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up there, Charles. I was about to mention it myself. Just looking at that gap between Overstreet and our leader, Green, it was about 13, teetering around 12 seconds not very long ago. Now it's north of 15, so we're going to see Megan Overstreet try and put her nose to the grindstone to see if she can bring that gap down. With Green and West bump drafting each other, though, I'm not sure it's good. I think it's going to be a fairly fruitless effort as Jason Grider has had another spin, this time coming out of turn number 7. The driver of the number 552 car running down in 16th, a fairly inconsequential spin when it comes to this spectrum of the rest of this race, as we're seeing Brad Cathcart battling hard a little bit farther up the road. This with Jacobson. Both of these drivers were involved in incidents in that super cluster of moments that we had at the end of lap 1 and beginning of lap number 2. However, they're still in it with some clean looking race cars, surprisingly so considering the whack that they had together, and they're now side by side. Well, not side by side, they're still nose to tail. Now they're side by side on corner exit, heading out of turn number 4 and into turn number 5. Jacobson will be able to get the move done before they even think about turning into the kink of turn 5. But getting back to that talk of what's going to happen with that battle between West and Green and Overstreet, you can see them bump drafting, heading their way to the tri-oval in a few moments time. They're working together, and with them working together, the bump drift playing dividends as that gap between themselves and Overstreet is still north of 15 seconds. And if they can maintain that, Overstreet, I think even with that gap that she has currently, she had about a 1.6, 1.7 second gap before she came down into the pits very early on into this race. So even with that, I think she'll be able to be within a Oh, as we had another spin here for Brad Cathcart, just spun out of turn 7 and spins again, trying to get back facing in the right direction. But Overstreet, I feel, would still be just a stone's throw away from West End Green, with Grider stopped off the track again, this time heading through 1. What are your thoughts on Overstreet's chances in this race, Charles? What do you think?
Something's going to have to happen. They're going to either they'll have to come down the pit road individually. They're going to split, or they're going to, somebody's going to have to make a mistake and just come down too slowly or something. I think that's the only way she's going to get. She's losing time. Antonio Race looks like he's making up time on her, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think by the time they end up together on track, that it'll be too little too late, and it's just going to be too much of a gap for them to make up.
And I just saw something out of the corner of my eye as we followed some of the drivers heading through turn number 1. Antonio Reese has made his way up into 4th. I'll touch on that in just a few moments' time. Grider is still stopped on the side of the circuit coming out of turn number 1. I think, actually, no, he's back rolling now. He was stopped for a very long period of time, pretty much an entire lap. So, I don't know, maybe he decided, hey, I'm stopped here, may as well get out of my car and use one of the other porta potties right by the other turn 1 runoff area. Brad Cathcart has come into the pits a little bit farther up the road. Nathan Bowden, the Australian driver who we saw in that Formula Ford race earlier on, he's in the Spec Racer Ford race too, and he's running quite nicely. He's in the top 10, and I don't think we've talked about him at all throughout this broadcast. The driver of the 19 car running in a pretty decent spot with still less than half of the race left to go.
Yeah, he's having a really good race. Much better, I would say, than he did in the Formula 4s. So a couple of new guys in P8 and 9, Farragher and Bowden. And so, yeah, they're running well. They're pretty much in a group with themselves and Gary Wobolt. So it's just going to be them battling for those 3 positions between now and the end of the race. Unless somebody slips back and slips back into their positions. But we've got, everybody's made their pit stop with the exception of the lead 2 cars. So we'll see how long they manage to stay out there and hang on to that gap. And then we'll see where they end up once they come back out.
There's still a lot left to be decided in this race. I'm not going to say that it's calmed down. If anything, it's probably going to ramp up between now and the end of this. We still have to see how Megan Overstreet shakes out compared to everyone. That gap has actually increased by 3 seconds as of late, so Overstreet really struggling, possibly falling into the clutches of Antonio Reese here in the not-too-distant future. And I'm curious as we see some side-by-side fighting between Andre Favini and Daniel Wood, with Favini winning out in that fight, at least for now. I'm curious when it comes to Antonio Reese. He started this race down in pit lane, and I'm curious if his pit lane start counts as him coming down in the pits. He could technically claim that if he wanted to, and if that is the case, he may be able to challenge Megan Overstreet for a podium finish here. That would be very, very good for the driver that started this race well farther down.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to be able to get away with that. So I don't think that's going to be. I don't think that's going to fly. I think it's going to be. He's going to have to come down for his drive-through. I don't know. I won't say that I know the rules like the back of my hand, but my guess is going to be even if he did a pit start, he's still going to have to come down and serve his drive-through penalty, or serve his Joker lap as we've named it. So yeah, I think he still have to come down and make that drive. And then we'll see where he shakes out. If so, then obviously that's going to put him down another 13 seconds or so. That's going to put him back there somewhere between Philip Berry in 7th and Bowden in 8th.
But still, regardless of how things shake out, very nicely played from Antonio Reese, currently up 15 spots from where he started this race. And I think we may have had another off a little bit farther in the back. I think Favini is dropping down like a rock, so not sure may have happened there. I think maybe I think there may have been some driver going for a spin hang through turn number 7. Regardless, getting back to the point I was going to mention, Nathan Bowden, who we saw not very long ago, he has actually been the hardest charger outside of Antonio Reese, up 10 spots from where he started this race. So incredibly impressive for the Australian to cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. It has been a very impressive drive and an under the radar drive considering all the chaos that we've had thus far. Certainly helping out his case, but still to make up 10 spots in this race is very mightily impressive.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's having a great run as we're now looking at Farragher in P number 9 in that battle with Bowden and Bradshaw. Bradshaw working his way around the outside, and along with Woolbolt. I think Bradshaw is now a newcomer to this group. It's not to see the Ford Mustang livery, the Ford Mustang GT3 that just got released on iRacing has been moved over to the Spec Racer. I think it looks quite nice on the Spec Racer car with the little pony on side. As we see Bowden just a little wide coming through one, manages to catch the car. Obviously, it just stalls his momentum out. He's losing a couple of spots, but he's still in that group, so plenty of chances to battle back and get those positions back.
That was about to be the worst commentator's jinx I've ever pulled off. Right as I was saying that Brown was having a fantastic run, he goes off the track heading through one and is now down to P number 11. Meanwhile, we're keeping tabs on this fight up at the front end of the field. Bobby West and Jason Green, and with that gap they have to Overstreet, is going to be the battle for the win. Jason Green has stopped his way into the pit lane. Very, very close. He, again, very, very marginal when it comes to trying to get woed up in time for that pit lane speed limit to start. Hopefully for Jason Green's sake, he did not speed on pit entry. Hopefully for ourselves as well, because I think a fight between West and Green coming to the checkered flag is going to be a crazy one. And again, we're riding on board with Green, trundling his way down pit lane. You feel like the pit lane speed limit should have ended back there, and Jason Green hits a wall, so a driver getting called out by the tricky pit exit we have here at Daytona International Speedway on the road course. Jason Green gets called out by that badly. I don't think there was a significant whack. However, if there's a small little piece of bodywork that's a little bit off kilter and out of touch with the rest of Jason Green's race car, that may hurt him a lot when it comes to that fight between West and Overstreet. The gap between those two is about 4 seconds, with Green now done for with that stop. Overstreet, she's going to be enjoying seeing a car in front of her for the first time in quite some time and enjoying that drift as well. But Jason Green, that was a decent scrape along the wall on pit exit. Do you think that may have hurt him there, Charles?
It looked like there's damage on the right rear of that car from where he hit the wall. I don't know if it's extremely significant or not, but you know, he does have the initials JG on his car, and you mentioned earlier that Jeff Gordon was one of the guys who did that, so maybe that's an homage.
Nice catch. Nice catch.
But interestingly enough, the split pit strategy is interesting because now that separates those guys. So now they're running on their own, and we're going back to that closed solo qualifying, and Megan Overstreet was the fastest car during qualifying. So now it's a matter of, is she going to be able to make up the time between these two, and where is West going to come out when he does take his pit stop? And so it's going to be very interesting. If he slots in between Green and Overstreet, that might be enough to get those two cars together and stretch that draft out to where they all start tightening back up again, and that's going to make the end of this race extremely interesting.
We just saw something very interesting. Bobby West not shadowing Jason Green's call to come down pit lane. He has stayed out for yet another lap. So Bobby West leading them in the number 89 car. The gap between himself and Jason Green was 15.3 seconds, now cratering down to 15.2. West, he was one of the front qualifiers in this race. I'm trying to fact check myself to see what kind of pace differential there was between the likes of West and Green and Overstreet, but to my knowledge they were still fairly close when it came for that qualifying session earlier on this afternoon. But still, I'm curious how West can hold on to it. He's gonna have to push like hell if he wants to hold on to that lead. I think Green, he's possibly in the catbird seat to take the lead, and maybe if we see a car between West and Green, we could see Megan Overstreet get dragged back into that fight. It's still about 4 seconds separating Green and Overstreet. Overstreet 19.1 seconds back of Bobby West. However, I think that gap between Overstreet and West has actually decreased ever since Green came into the pits not very long ago. As, oh no, Nathan Bowden has gone for a spin hang through turn number 1. So right as I was saying not very long ago that he was putting on a very good show, he's had mistakes. Hang through turn number 1 has dropped down to P13. Still up a decent amount of positions, which I will not talk about too much in the hopes that I don't commentators jinx him yet again. But that fight up towards the front, we were expecting it to be pretty much a bare-knuckle fist fight involving race cars. And speaking of, we've got a hard fight between these drivers running in P8 and P9. Bradshaw and Farragher heading through turn 6 right now, side by side. They're again going to be side by side on corner exit, hang their way through turn 7. Farragher gets the move done to get into P number 8. But we were expecting the fight for the win to be just a bare-knuckle fist fight involving Spec Racer Fords. However, it's a bit more methodical and strategic than we were really expecting. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah,
Is it a bit more? What are your expectations compared to what you expected from this race and what's actually transpired thus far?
I actually was expecting a little bit tighter group up at the front, but the drive-through has kind of broken that group up. We do still have this group here with Bradshaw, Farragher, Wolbo. Woods, Vini, and Bowden are just behind them. So it could tighten this group back up. So we could still have a really big battle between P8 and P13. So it's really just depending on where West comes out once he takes his pit stop. Like I said, if he kind of jumps in between Green and Overstreet, then it's going to be craziness for the last few minutes of the race as those cars tighten back up from the draft. So that's just going to be the key to it. It's just how West handles his drive-through, and if he makes any kind of mistakes, that's probably going to be the end of his chances for a win.
I was just going to mention that we saw a few weeks ago at Winton Raceway during the regular season when we saw Joao Tabino, who was in the catbird seat, to take a dominant win. And that's a big off there for Farragher. Thankfully, he avoids hitting any sort of cars rejoining the racetrack. That was a huge moment, heading down off the banking and into turn number 1, and Broden has had a mistake a little bit farther back as well. He's still back to the pits, and he is out of the session in P17. I think we may be able to find a replay to see what happened to Bowden, the driver of the 19 car. I'm going to put that squarely on myself. Right as I said, he was having a quiet race, as multiple mistakes throughout the second half of this, and sadly for him, it has all come down to naught. And Antonio Reese, who was the hard charger up 15 spots, he's still running in 4th, so I'm curious, maybe he's going to use that loophole of like, hey, I started this race in the pits, I was down pit lane already. He may try and use that to weasel his way into P number 4. That'd be a pretty smart call from him. We'll just have to see if that sticks. But Bobby West has now finally come down pit lane. He has a 15.3 second gap to Jason Green right behind. He is very cautious on pit entry, it must be said. Any sort of penalty, whether it be a speeding on entry or speeding on exit penalty, that would hurt him dearly. So Bobby West may be taking it a little bit careful within his margins quite comfortably, because any sort of penalty would hurt him dramatically. Green is going to be close, though. It's going to be barely any air separating them. You see Green on the left-hand side of your screen heading his way around turn number 1. He runs wide on corner entry, though, so that's going to hurt him a teeny tiny bit. I think that West is still going to lose that there. Yeah, Green retakes the lead of the race. They're going to be side by side, though, heading into turn number 1. Actually, no, it's Green taking the lead, but that gap between the two of them only a half a second, with about 7.5 minutes left to go. In Overstreet, she's only about 3.6 seconds back of this man, Jason Green, which may seem like a lot. However, with a decent amount of time left to go, she may be able to close up that gap if these drivers start trading banging elbows and trading blows with each other. I think Overstreet, she still has a very good shot to win this.
Yeah, she does, but they're going to have to do some fighting. That's the only way she's going to be able to catch back up. If they decide they're going to swap positions back and forth, especially if they're going in through the bus stop too wide, that will bring her back up to the front. I think that's the only way. I think as long as these guys stay together and run nose to tail, I don't think she's going to be able to make up the ground. So she's going to have to hope that they get a little greedy and try and battle for that win.
I think she's probably going to be having her fingers crossed between now and the end of this. That gap has actually increased a little bit now, teetering around 3.8, close to 4 seconds. We'll see how that gap develops between now and the end of this race, which is coming up in the not too distant future. 6.5 minutes left to go on the clock, and Jason Green is going to be leading them at that 6.5 minute left to go mark. Green, he's very fast. Bobby West, very fast. Bobby, he's looking to do the double, which I'm not sure has ever happened. Charles, do you remember a time in which a driver pulled off the double in the vRunoffs to win in both the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords? If he is the first, though, it it would be an achievement. Even if he isn't, it would still be a very great achievement for the Brit in the number 89 car. He's going to be leading them at the start of lap 18. Got that move done on Jason Green. This, I really can't predict who's going to win, and West and Green very fast, pretty evenly matched pace-wise too. I think it's a 50-50. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think now it's the last 5.5 minutes of the race is now setting up for that final run. So I don't think unless they significantly slow down and Overstreet starts trying to catch back up and make up ground to get in the fight, I don't think you're going to see very much fighting until that last lap. And then obviously, as we talked about with the draft here, you're going to want to be the second car in the line and not the first. So strategy will start playing out here, and I don't think we're going to want a repeat of Homestead a couple of seasons ago, where they're basically trying to stop on turn 6 and 7. Slowing down to allow the other car to get out front as we see Green take down to the inside. So they're going to go side by side here. That's going to help Overstreet out, as now the gap's down to 3.3 seconds.
I was just gonna say that Megan Overstreet, she's kicked on the Hyperjets towards the end of this race, but again, that gap 3.2 seconds. If this race was maybe an hour long, she would have a very good shot to make it up and close that gap between these two and herself. However, with less than 5 minutes left to go, only 4.5 minutes now left in this 40-minute race, I think it may be too little too late for Megan Overstreet. However, we've seen stranger things happen in this series. We've seen stranger things happen in this race. In a race that had Paul Jackson do 4 front flips earlier on, we could see Megan Overstreet pull out the win. We could see Antonio Reese end up winning, and he's still not come in for his stops, and maybe pulling off the strategy call that I suggested a little bit earlier on. Bobby West and Green side by side, heading their way into the tri-oval to begin lap 18. My apologies, we are on lap 17, starting on lap 18 now. I said they were starting lap 18 last time by, now they're on lap 18 with less than 4 minutes left on the clock. Jason Green in P2, Bobby West in P1, and that gap between themselves and Megan Overstreet again continuing to decrease, now down to 3.0 seconds. So I'm curious how this race is developing for Megan Overstreet. Does she have the pace advantage through the infield section, and those two are just pulling away, going down the infield, going down through the oval? Or I'm curious as to how the pace is helping out and hurting out Megan Overstreet, because that gap it's a seesaw effect, because going through the infield, it looks like it's decreasing or staying about the same. However, when she goes back onto the tri-oval section, that's when it starts to increase a little bit. So I think Megan Overstreet, she may have the heads up on those two heading through the infield section. I'm not really sure how this seesaw effect is playing out when it comes to the pace. What's your theory, Charles?
I think that she is losing out, obviously, when the draft really kicks in on the NASCAR oval. Obviously, the 2 cars are faster than one. But I think it's a net positive, because I think she is that much quicker in the infield that what she's losing in this draft here is not hurting her as much. And as you can see, they're down to 2.8. And so now the draft's kicking in a little bit. The gap's rising slightly, a couple of tenths here going into the bus stop. And so, yeah, it's just going to be can her pace advantage in the infield work out and get her up until that draft. As you can see now, 2.6. So she's definitely going for it. She's driving as hard as she absolutely can to try and make that time up. As these cars go side by side, that's helping her out.
They're battling hard, heading through NASCAR 4 Road Course 12. They're about to hit the tri-oval for what is going to be the second to last time. They're taking the white flag now, so is it going to be Jason Green or is it going to be Bobby West taking that white flag still side by side? West is going to be the one taking that white flag, but as we saw in the case of Megan Overstreet during that Formula Ford race earlier on this afternoon, she took the white flag. However, it didn't really work out too well for her. Antonio Reese has stopped from P number 4, so we'll see him trundle his way down the pit lane. We'll see how he shakes out compared to Stevie Ray and Jesus Rodriguez on P5 and P6. Antonio has stopped in his box, so this is going to hurt him out dramatically. It was very quick, stopped in his box, so only 2.8. So maybe he needed a quick little splash and dash regardless. Antonio Rees, very good recovery drive. However, it's not going to be the P4 result that he may have expected him to get. Right now, Jason Green, Bobby West, barely any air separating them, hanging to turn number 6 for the final time. Megan Overstreet at this stage, it's about 2.5 seconds. It's too little too late from Overstreet. She's going to hope for these two drivers to crash into each other, which, hey, this race has been dramatic and attrition-packed so far. It could very well happen as they run to the checkered flag. West running wide on corner exit, hang through turn number 7. Hopefully he didn't pick up a slowdown for that, because that was very, very wide. I think he kept it just barely within the confines of the race circuit. So he is going to be at full song going on through turn number 1 and 2 on the oval now. They're going to be side by side through there with Green clearing him onto that back straightaway. Maybe a little bit of a smart, actually no, I say that, Bobby West looking to retake the lead. This is not a smart call, I feel, from Bobby West, and rightfully so. He backs out of it. I was about to say, you don't want to lead. It was the man's words himself last time out from the final ever Week 12 broadcast from the Weekend Warriors Championship race this past season. He said, you don't want to be leading coming out of the chicane. You want to be in second. He's in second now. He is going to be closing up that gap between himself and Jason Green. Green is going to be a sitting duck. You can see him running him up the track all the way up nearly into the safer barrier. They make contact and he spun around. These two are linked together, and Megan Overstreet is going to blow their doors off, and in the end, in a dramatic series of events coming to take the checkered flag, Megan Overstreet in the comeback of a century is going to win it. Megan Overstreet wins at the Daytona International Speedway. Bobby West is going to be he's going to be furious with how he was raced compared to Jason Green. Green playing the sportsman role. He led Bobby West by coming to the checkered flag. We've got some side-by-side action here between Rodriguez and Barry. Barely any air separating. These two drivers are not being banging and roughing each other up. They're running clean to the line. Who's it going to be in this photo finish between these two? It's going to be Phil Barry in the Triple Eight car, rounding out your top 5 with only 0.4 of a second separating them, coming to take the checkered. Wow, my God. I mean, I said during this race that we've seen stranger things from this season. Favini is going to be blowing Woods' doors off to take the checker flag in P8 in a very dramatic finish there. But man, Charles, we are expecting the fight between West and Green. Maybe a little bit of contact between those two. We certainly weren't expecting that in that very upsetting finish for those two, and an absolute miracle for Megan Overstreet.
No, you weren't expecting that, but the whole strategy started like going into turn 1. They were basically jockeying to see who was going to lead coming out of 6 and 7 onto the oval, and you could just see it. I was watching the gap, and the gap was just slowly decreasing a little bit at a time back to Overstreet. So that neither one of them wanted to lead, and finally Green says, "Okay, I'll go out front." West got the run. Green ran him up the track, contact made, both spun. Overstreet, from 2.5 seconds back wins the race. Yeah, it's draft racing. I think they'll all say, yeah, that's kind of part and parcel of racing these cars. Is you have to acknowledge the draft, and you have to strategize with it. So. I'm sure there's probably some frustrations, but I think, this being the runoffs race, I don't think it's there's going to be hard feelings going into the next season. I think it's just one of those deals, and it made for some exciting racing for as far as we were concerned.
And I think to make it a little bit awkward between Green and West, they're currently in the SRF Discord channel, and they're in the same voice channel right now. So, man, what would I be to be a fly on the wall in that room right now? But anyway, here are the results from this 40-minute affair. Megan Overstreet, in a dramatic series of events, ends up taking the checkered flag in the Spec Racer Fords to win the Week 13 vRunoffs. Bobby West ends up in a heartbreaking P2. It was so close. Really, it was his race to win, coming to take the checker flag. Sadly, with some aggressive driving from Jason Green, he doesn't get the double. Jason Green ends up in P3. I give Jason Green a lot of credit. That incident well, I will not say who I personally feel was at fault in that incident, but Jason Green playing the sportsman and letting West by, coming to take the checkered flag. Stevie Ray, who I don't think we talked about at all throughout this broadcast, he ends up in 4th. Talked about him a bit throughout the Formula Ford race, and he was involved in some tense battles throughout this as well. Ends up in 4th here in the Spec Racer Fords. Phil Berry is going to be in 5th. Jesus Rodriguez ends up in P number 6 in that heart-pumping photo finish between those two. Antonio Race in 7th. Andre Favini in 8th, Daniel Wood in 9th, and Adam Bradshaw will round out your top 10.
Yeah, Gary Woolbolt in 11th, Patrick Farragher in 12th, Jeff Jacobson 13th, Brad Cathcart in 14th, Paul Jackson 15th, first car a lap down, and gave us the most exciting replay that we had today. Jason Grider in 16th, Nathan Bowden in 17th, Stephen Healy 18th, Josh Wilkie 19th, and Pedro Carvalho rounds out your 20-car finishing order. So yeah, it was I just looking at the 5th and 6th was exactly identical down to the thousandth and the second. That's how close that finish was. So crazy.
Craziness from start to finish. Even in the Formula Ford race, 4 cars covered by less than a tenth of a second coming to take the checkered flag after a half an hour of racing. Then here in the Spec Racer Fords, a crash coming to the line for the drivers that are running in P1 and P2, and Megan Overstreet comes out of the blue. I feel like Nostradamus, I was saying earlier on in that lap that she was hoping and praying for a miracle, and Megan Overstreet ended up getting it. I think we'll be able to have a chat with her before we wrap things up. Megan Overstreet joins us now here on Apex Racing TV, and Megan, oh my God, I'm sure you're just as shocked as how that finish came out to be as we are here in the broadcast booth. Talk us through that Spec Racer Ford race.
Oh, that was a wild ending, but pretty much I was able to pull away a little bit at the start. Jason got a slowdown going through the Le Mans chicane, so that let me break the draft on everybody, but him and Bobby were working together really well, so they were slowly catching back up. So I was like, you know what, I'm not going to give them that draft. I'm going to go ahead and hit the pits early. Hopefully I'll be able to put in some good laps and draft off some other people, and it'll let me leapfrog them after they make their drive-through. But I made like 3 massive mistakes when I was driving back to the field, so it cost me about 4 or 5 seconds. But luckily, the way things ended up, it worked out for me.
Oh, it had to have been an absolute roller coaster of emotions, I'm sure. After seeing that incident between Green and West coming to take the checkered flag, you probably want to buy a lottery ticket after everything is said and done from the Spec Racer Ford race. Talk us through that finish, though. I mean, with a 2.5 second gap coming back onto the big oval to round off this race, I mean, what was going through your head at the beginning of the lap, and what was going through your head when you saw just a cloud of smoke in front of you and those two stopped on the infield?
Yeah, whenever we were getting on the first part of the backstretch before the Le Mans chicane, I was hoping they would start slowing down to see who wants to be in front of the other, and that would let me almost catch up to their draft. So going through the chicane, I'd be able to just leapfrog them really, really good. But yeah, so after they got through there pretty clean, and we're going through NASCAR 3 and 4, I was like, okay, 3rd place, not bad for the day, not bad at all. Like, then I saw them going up way high. I was like, oh no, they're about to touch. And then they got locked up. I was like, that's so unfortunate. I'm gonna go get the win.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, they're crashing. Hey, I'm going to win. So there's a little bit of a mixed emotion seeing those two wreck coming to take the checkered flag. And you mentioned in that time, pretty much running all by your lonesome throughout a vast majority of this race, you made some mistakes. I'll ask you this: what do you think was the trickiest part of this racetrack here in these Spec Racer Fords?
Turn 1. It's always turn 1. That corner just drives me crazy. Almost every time I'm going through it, the rear end's sliding out from underneath me. I think.
Well, thankfully. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think very early on, there were quite a few catastrophes coming through turn 1 for a few folks, because I saw a lot of chaos in my rearview mirror.
Oh, when you look back on the broadcast, you're going to see, I believe it was Paul Stevens flip 4 times on the exit of turn number 1, front flip as well. So very very bizarre race that we had here with the Spec Racer Fords, and you're the one that ended up taking the checkered flag. So congratulations on your win here. A fantastic way to come back to the series after being absent throughout a vast majority of the season. So heading into next season here, season 3 of 2024, are you planning to be with us here on track throughout a vast majority of it? How are things going to shake out for you there?
I hope so. It all depends on what work decides to do on making us work 7 days a week or just 6 days a week.
Well, hopefully you can have your time off to join us here every single Sunday, because it is an absolute privilege to have you on the racetrack. Congratulations on the win, as I said. And before we let you go, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, thank y'all for doing the broadcast. Y'all do a fantastic job as always. I love watching after I get done on the sim rig. Thank you to Stevie Ray for putting on the series and all the work that he has to put in behind the scenes. Our sponsors, everybody out there watching, and my family. Thank y'all so much.
And thank you, Megan, for joining us. Congratulations on the win yet again. And I guess you'll be going off to the convenience store now to get a lottery ticket after the way that finish ended up shaking out.
Definitely. Fingers crossed I'm hit big.
Alrighty. If we hit big, we'll probably see you on track a lot more. So that'll be double win for you.
Exactly.
And that was Megan Overstreet, our winner from the Week 13 vRunoffs. And Charles, he's probably, the gentleman we have waiting in the interview waiting area is probably sick and tired of talking to me. So would you like to have a chat with series admin Stevie Ray to wrap things up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's bring Stevie. Stevie, hey, first, congratulations on a P4, uneventful P4 for you. But sometimes just staying out of trouble is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, keep it on the track, and a couple of times that was just barely, but it was not totally uneventful on my part, but yeah, it was good enough. So yeah, it was a good race, a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, we had 2 really good races today. To cap off a fantastic season. I think at least in the Spec Racer side, it's probably the closest points battle we had across all 3 classes. At least since I've been around. So I mean, it's been a little while. So it was a really, really competitive season this season.
Yeah, it was, and it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, these guys keep working to improve, and the Spec 2 guys work to move up, and the old guys try to improve so they can show the young guys how it's done, and it just feeds on itself. So it's a really good thing. We had some good reviews and feedback this time, and giving some feedback to the drivers when they had some mistakes to clean up, and it just all in all, like you said, it was a really good, fun season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously from our side, I always say thank you for being able to do the broadcast. It's just fantastic racing to talk about these cars, because of the nature of them, Spec Series. With some little additions where you can do some setup stuff. It's just fantastic, and it's been just a pleasure for me to be able to talk about these drivers. They're a great group of people, I'll say my thank you again, but I'll let you do your thank yous, because I know that they're very important.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I appreciate the kind words, and you're right. It is a great community, extended family, whatever you want to say, but these guys are great. I'd put these leagues up against anybody, anytime. I think we got some of the best, and we keep working to improve it. New season coming up, like you mentioned. We don't have a corporate sponsors. Our members chip in and donate and help support that, and they're the ones that make our broadcast possible. So again, huge thanks to these guys. They're the ones that make the league what it is. I just kind of set it up and organized it, but those guys are the ones every week after week, they're out there battling and having fun and keeping it the good league. We got a new sponsor thing that came up this season as an idea, and it seems to be taking off, that if anyone wants to sponsor a race, we can do that. Put your name on it, your family, your favorite charity, whatever you want. $65 for a race, and it's your race. So we're doing that for the Formula Fords and the SRFs, and it seems to be taking off, like I said. So looking forward to that and getting everything set up for a new season.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. And I absolutely would. I'm just kind of speaking here because the first we talked about it is we love to have those people that sponsor. If they want to come in and do an interview, either prior to or after the race, I think would be a great addition to the
that would be
to
awesome.
the broadcast. So. So I will say this, and I have been talking with Mr. Jim Brewster and his sister Tamara. She will be in with us for the Spec Racer race next week
awesome.
in the broadcast booth. So we'll get her perspective. So I think it's going to add a little interesting to it, some interesting tidbits to it. We'll find out about what Jim was like growing up. And that'll be that'll be the best part about everything. So
yeah. Find out what kind of stories he's been feeding her about us too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, Stevie, thank you very much again. Great season, great runoffs today, and we'll look forward to the next season starting up next week. It's going to be amazing, and I'm sure that we'll get plenty of information coming up the next week or so.
Yep, we'll get it out on the Facebook and on the website. So RayEsportsRacing.com. Check it out. I've got a page for all 3 leagues. So come see us. Come join us on track. It's a lot of fun. Great group of people. And thank you. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Smuley. I appreciate all you guys do.
Yeah, and whenever you want to get rid of Josh and put him back in the booth, we'll take him back and keep him off the track.
Yeah, we had a little fun together today.
Okay, there we go. All right, good enough. Thank you very much, Stevie. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Have a good day, guys.
All right.
Thank you for joining us, Stevie. And that is Stevie Ray, the series admin. And Charles, that was not very kind of our buddy Josh Wilkie. I think the next broadcast we have with him is coming up in a few weeks' time, at least as things shake out at the moment. So we can get away with saying that without him reading us the riot act in just a few days' time. And speaking of in a few days' time, we have a whole lot of action coming up here on Apex Racing TV. The new season starting, we have new GT3 cars in the world of iRacing. That's going to be a big center of attention when the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy starts up in just a few weeks' time. We also have the Rikmatech World Challenge Season 10, Round 3 at Misano. That's going to be a very good race. I'm definitely not just saying that because I do the officiating for that series. I'm hoping it's clean as well. We also have the Oman Digital Motorsports F4 Championship coming up round 4 at Alton Park this upcoming Tuesday here on the East Coast at 1:15 p.m. in the afternoon. Got a whole lot of stuff coming up here on Apex Racing TV day in and day out, week in and week out. Gives you more of a reason to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell as well. And hopefully in 1 week's time we'll be back here with the Weekend Warriors series. And Charles, it's been a fantastic season. I've had a blast covering this series with you. You're the veteran here on these broadcasts. I just want to get your final thoughts on the season we've had, the races that we've had, and the funny moments we've had here on the broadcast booth as well.
Every week brings something new, but all the newness is kind of anchored by the group of people that we get to talk about week in and week out. And I'll have to echo what Stevie said. One of the best racing communities in iRacing, and I would completely agree with him. Just a fantastic group. As he said, an extended family, maybe slightly dysfunctional at times, but I think all families have a little bit of that.
There's fun in dysfunction.
Yes, there is. You can't have dysfunction without some fun, correct? Okay, so no, it's a fantastic series. I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. I love talking about these races every week, and it's made, like I said, it's made me an SCCA fan. I didn't know very much about these cars when I picked this up, but I mean, pound for pound, some of the best racing you're going to find in iRacing, bar none. And it doesn't matter whatever the league you're going to put it against. These just a great group of drivers, a lot of real world experience out on the track from these guys that and girl that do this week in and week out. So yeah, looking forward to next season. It's going to be a blast.
Next season is going to be awesome, and we have a whole lot to talk about when Season 3 of 2024 for the Weekend Warrior Series starts up next Sunday. We got some schedule stuff to talk about. We've got some of the new drivers that may be joining us, but overall, it's going to be action-packed from start to finish, and hopefully fun as well. As for this season, as for this broadcast, and as for this race, I think that will do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle, joining me in the commentary booth all season long, and Samuli Kumo doing a great job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler. I say thank you all so very much for watching not just this broadcast, but the entire season here for the Weekend Warrior season, and we hope to see you back on track and here on Apex Racing TV in just 1 week's time.